back from recess. Was it fun? Did anybody play kickball? No kickball? Dodgeball? No dodgeball? Ice skating on the sidewalk? Did anybody fall down? No broken hips? Okay, good. Then we're all back here and ready to go. We have a privilege of the floor. Representative Clouston, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have some special guests today with us. To our South Gallery, please help me welcome the 2024 Wyoming WWAMI Medical School class. These 20 individuals represent the newest cohort of our medical students who study in Laramie for 18 months before beginning their clerkship phase of their training around the WWAMI region. In 1996, we began the WWAMI program under Governor Jim Geringer. This program has graduated over 350 physicians, with more than 260 of those actively practicing medicine after completing the residency and fellowship. We should all be proud of the fact that Wyoming WWAMI celebrates nearly 62% return to the state after completing their rigorous training. And they'll take care of us now and into the future, which this body will need. It's now my pleasure to recognize this year's WWAMI class. Students, as I name your name and city, please stand so we can thank you for your dedication to Wyoming and your commitment to return to Wyoming and the practice of medicine. What a great career, and we are so proud of you. So I'm going to name these 20 students. If you can applaud for them at the end, and I'll do my best with their names. First one is Kyler Areola from Jackson. Carson Asher from Powell. Caden Crooks from Cody. Cassidy Delos from Cheyenne. McKenna Angelker from Douglas. Noah Gustafson from Banner. Celeste Colleen from Rock Springs. Jill Myers from Bighorn. Shay Nelsons from Afton. Aiden O'Connor from Laramie. Audrey Peasley from Douglas. Avery Potter is from Casper. Ben Radosvik from Casper. And Timothy Radosvik from Green River. Sarah Weatherford from Casper. Lulu Rochelle from Casper. Jack Searing is from Sheridan. Annika Seavrud is from Rock Springs. And finally, Hannah Thomas from Green River. Thank you all for being here. Who are we missing?
The poor girl with her face over there. I don't know what her name is.
I think we missed one of the lovely young ladies.
So,
long blonde gal.
either I skipped over or on the list, but who are you and where are you from? All right, thank you.
Hey. Welcome to the House. Thank you for what you're doing. And the job field that you have entered is direly necessary to the state and to this nation. So thank you for that. That is a calling. And then I have had family members that are in the physician practice, and that is truly a calling. So thank you. And I look forward to long and successful careers. And hopefully they're all taking place in Wyoming. And so thank you for what you're doing. Okay. One other, Representative Davis, what might you have for our
Thank you, Mr.
perusal?
Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please.
To our West Gallery, we have the mayor from Superior, Wyoming, Dominic Wolf, and he's here enjoying us here.
Superior, Wyoming, that's hard to beat. It is beautiful at that, therefore it is superior, I understand. So any other announcements from the floor? Welcome to the House. Thank you for being here, Mayor. Anyone else? Seeing none? Our good majority floor leader, please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The House will resolve itself into committee of the whole. Congratulations and welcome, Representative Weber.
Thank you, body. The Committee of the Whole, please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill Joint Resolution 1. Hold on. Thank you, Ocean. I think I have.
Senate File 100.
168 is, I have 168. It's
Okay, got it. Okay, it changed. Sorry.
Okay. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 168. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 168, sponsored by Senator Hicks. Budget Reserve Account repeal, an act relating to public funds. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 168, Budget Reserve Account repeal, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Alaman, Angelos, Bear, Haroldson, Pendergraft, Sherwood. Excused, Representative Smith. Representative Bear, Chairman.
For some reason.
Okay.
3.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Bear?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 168 do pass, and I turn the explanation of the bill over to the good representative from the town where our land-grant university is.
Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think some of you stole my tagline over lunch, but I am bringing you the bra burning bill. Right? Yeah, so good, so good. Thank you, guys. So this bill is brought to you in an effort to clean up our accounts and make it easier for us and the public to see what we use as a checking account, our general fund, and as a savings account, the LISRA or the rainy day account. So this bill reserves the budget reserve account. The BRA was originally created as an intermediate savings account or a secondary checking account to the general fund. The balance from the BRA will be transferred to the general fund on July 1st, 2026, and any funds that were previously directed by law to be deposited in it or reverted to it will be moved to the general fund. This includes federal mineral royalties, or FMRs, and the severance tax. Any funds appropriated or obligated from the BRA will then be paid from the general fund. And if there are additional questions about the bill, I would invite any of the sponsors here in the House to help answer questions. Thanks.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and for this bill, this is part of a plan to streamline and to add transparency, and it's a good way to go.
Representative Lasha.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple questions. It seems that the budget reserve account has served its purpose quite well. I don't know of any terrible deficiencies in it over the years. So why now? Why do we decide now it's superfluous and not needed anymore? And the second question would be, if there are funds in the budget reserve account, why not move those over to the LSRA as opposed to putting them in the general fund?
Any further discussion? Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to answer the questions that just came up. This is essentially a second checking account, and therefore we roll in the two checking accounts into one, like I said, for streamlining the way things work and keeping it more efficient. It would not be appropriate to dump it all into LISRA at this point.
Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question for the sponsors of the bill. First of all, members, I think the good representative from Natrona County just asked that question, and what problem are we trying to fix? And I think we got to understand how this account works. The budget reserve account was actually created, I think, in 1984, 40 plus years ago. And the whole idea is to have an intermediate account where the chief executive cannot spend from it. Statute says he can't spend from it or profile out of it. And it serves as, we put this 5% amount in of the budget to serve as really cash flow, because revenue comes in at different times. Severance tax collection on minerals, ad valorem on minerals, sales tax, how those things all kind of flow in and out. So I guess I'm not, and then I look on, I guess I'd like to have, first of all, I've never seen a non-sponsor of a bill present a bill. I don't know how that works, but so this is a big bill, I think, to have an individual sponsored bill. Usually these are committee type bills, be it like a capital finance bill where you've studied it, talked about it, had a lot of public input. And the words were brought up: cleanup, transparency. Well, how many of you know really what's going to happen? The public's going to know on page 4 at the bottom. What's going to happen? When you look at lines 20 and 21 on the bottom of page 4, how does that affect the goldenrod? And how's it going to affect the LSRA? So maybe if a sponsor of the bill could answer that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair?
Representative Harshman.
Certainly, I'll keep discussing, I guess, till I get an answer, maybe. So on line 21, 2021, and then we eliminate the budget reserve account. How does this affect the goldenrod? I mean, I'm looking on, so let's turn to page 3 of our most recent goldenrod. And if you look at page 3, and I think it's line 18, that's the budget reserve account. So it shows that transfer of 152 million, and that's coming from the LSRA. And the LSRA's dropped from 1.8 when we began to, it's around 1.1, a little less right now. So what's going to happen to that 152 number? I'd love I think a sponsor of the bill, if you sponsor this, we ought to probably know the impact now. What's going to happen to that 152? So, Madam Chair, I guess I'll just say, here's what's going to happen, folks. That line is not going to be 152 anymore. It's going to grow to 190. See, because it's 5% of these general fund receipts, and we're going to put more receipts into the general fund, so we got to create a bigger reserve account. And I guess, Madam Chair, I'd also ask a sponsor of this. So we're getting rid of the budget reserve account, but what's this deal where it says, what does it say on page 5, line 14, new language? It creates a general fund reserve amount. So is this an account within the general fund? Or is it an amount within the general fund? I'd like an answer to that question. So more discussion, I think, Madam Chair.
Would any of the sponsors like to respond? Are you ready for the question?
Madam Chairman?
Representative Harshman.
Yeah, thank you. And these young doctors-to-be, this general file, it's unlimited debate, and so we can go back and forth, just so if you're watching the process. So I guess as I read this bill, we're getting rid of the budget reserve account, but we're creating the general fund reserve amount. How is that more transparent? How are you gonna know what that amount is? You gonna be able to see that on the goldenrod? See, I can see the budget reserve on page 3. I can see the amount. Where's the general fund reserve amount gonna be? And that's 5% of a bigger number, so we know the 152 is gonna grow to at least 190 or more. You look at the fiscal note, and that other 40 million then, 152 on page 3, budget reserve 5% amount. Where's that extra 40 million gonna come from? It's gonna come from the LSRA. So this might be the bill that puts us below $1 billion on the LSRA. So I'm not sure why we'd wanna take what's considered the most sound, best run fiscal state in the union and start tinkering with it. I don't know, on an individual bill, where I don't have a bill sponsor even getting up to answer my questions. Thank you.
Representative Angelos?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, we had said this is a second account, a second checking account off of the general fund. And we've heard from our own chief executive who had said that he would like us to get our accounts down to one checking and one savings account. That is why this is being run. You can see there's several sponsors on it, well accepted amongst a lot of different legislators, and it's simplifying the process, bringing more transparency. That's why the bill's there. Thank you.
Representative Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a little disappointed in this body. I'm not gonna lie. This is a major policy shift. Major policy shift. We're gonna shift from one pocket. I'm gonna take $40 million out of this pocket. I'm gonna toss it over here, and we're just supposed to feel good about it. I feel uncomfortable with my keys in my left pocket. I don't like that. My keys stay in my right pocket. They have since I was 16. Okay, well, if somebody tells me I need to change the keys from my right pocket to my left pocket, and they tell me you're gonna have to feel uncomfortable with it, I at least wanna know a reason why. The chairman, former Speaker of the House, former chairman of Appropriations, this is a big policy discussion, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few years ago, we put a lot of money into these reserve accounts trying to get these things to start growing some interest on it. We're going to throw this into our general fund. We're not going to gain any interest off of that. Frankly, I'm very disappointed in the fact that there's literally no debate on this topic. We're just being told, this is a bill, go for it. Where's the discussion? Where is the understanding that we need to have dialogue? We need to have discussion on these policy decisions, ladies and gentlemen. That is what we do. We're a deliberative body, not just because somebody told us to do something. I can't vote for this bill. I think I understand the idea that, well, our chief executive told us that they want to get down to one account. That's fine. But why? What is this solving? What problem do we have here? And this chairman, this former chairman and former Speaker of the House, whom I actually have the utmost respect for when it comes to state finances, has asked some pretty serious questions. He knows the answers to them, ladies and gentlemen. I guarantee you he knows the answers to them. Why is he asking the questions? Because he wants to find out if the people who sponsored this bill know the answers to these questions. I'd be willing to place the checking account that we're talking about here that none of them do know what the implications of this bill do.
Representative Larson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Folks, over the years, we've had this conversation on whether to keep or do away with the budget reserve account. And a common theme over the years is, well, we should have one checking account and one saving account. And I would just like to ask you, in your personal lives, you and your wives, how many of you just have one checking account? And so this idea that we're doing something differently than we do at our own homes is just doesn't doesn't hold the water. This is between, we got the budget reserve account first, then we established the LSRA to help backfill the general operations of state government when we run short. And we have, well, we had 349 days in the budget reserve account. It's not anymore. But I think, again, ask yourself these questions on what the problem is we're trying to solve. Transparency is there. You see it on your goldenrod. We talk about it all the time. So I again would give pause on this bill.
Representative Filer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got kind of a couple of questions too. If we're going to go from a budget reserve account to an amount general fund, it's not like a general fund reserve account. And I do believe, I think we kind of want to keep the general fund almost at a zero balance because the executive branch can use that money if what's left in the general fund account, if I'm correct. So are we eliminating a reserve account to put an extra amount into the general fund? But if we don't want the executive, leave any money on the table for the executive, where do we put the rest of that money to? Because the bill doesn't say a general fund reserve account or anything like that. It says amount. So we're just going to take the amount and just drop it into the general fund? I gotta get a little bit more help with this from somebody that either wrote the bill or where the understanding is coming from that, because I don't do this in my personal life. You know, if I got an investment account, I don't just draw that money and just put it in my checking account. I keep gaining interest and more money off of that reserve account that I already have built. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it too, folks. Thanks.
Representative Thayer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we, every day in this body, we're asking our local governments, we are asking our school districts to be transparent. And I'm not seeing the transparency on and against this bill.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Couple of questions as I was reading through this, and the explanation of it's just we're shutting down one account and moving it to the other. As far as moving it to the general fund, so the questions I have then start on page 9 with changing language to specific statutory distribution of revenue sources to our counties, to our cities. Amounts appropriated to local government shall not exceed over to any interest earned or invested funds allocated to local. I'm on the bottom of page 10, lines 20 through 22. So this change, any interest earned on invested funds allocated to local governments under this paragraph shall be retained in the general fund. Over to page 11, the state auditor, here's an additional language, I guess, on page 11, line 9, that the state auditor shall reduce the spending authority of any state agency receiving an appropriation under this paragraph. So there's a lot of language in here about state auditors and authority and distribution to our cities and our counties, and I don't understand how any of that plays into we're just taking a reserve account, shutting it down, and moving it into the general fund. There seems to be a lot more going on. So explanations of how those relate would be appreciated.
Any further discussion? Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I guess maybe my question should go to the former appropriator in the county number one in our hearts. I'm just wanting to get back to basics. I mean, I've been in this body for 4+ years now, and I'm still wrapping my head around our budget. It's one of the most complicated budgets in the country, which I think maybe that's where the impetus comes in, but I'm trying to understand what are the rules with this account? What other accounts are impacted by this? Because my understanding is goldenrod trickles into everything else. So I just want to know what other accounts are impacted, what other potential services, anything else that comes from this account that we are getting rid of, because it looks like we're deleting some, or we're pulling statutes, which makes sense if you're trying to move things around, but there's a lot of other statutes in here, and I would appreciate if someone could walk my little pea brain through exactly what this does in line by line to our budget and then on the ground. What does this mean?
Representative Connolly?
Thank you. I guess I would consider myself not the brightest light bulb sometimes, but I have a real concern with the new language in here that has to do with the local governments. And why, can somebody explain to me why we're doing this? It was like 30% to counties, 70% to cities and towns. Talks about the distributions shall be from revenue actually recognized. I mean, it goes on and on about the distribution to local governments, and I'm really confused on what this is really trying to do. So if somebody could help me, I would appreciate it.
Representative Filer?
Thanks, Madam Chair. And as I keep scrolling through this too, I'm trying to really wrap my head around it. Because I do believe less is more sometimes, even when it comes to accounts. But under this, if we look at page 13, it says distribution and use funds, accounts, cities, towns benefited, exception for bonus payments. So now it talks about amounts distributed to general fund, then coming back out. Once it hits $18 million, what's it do? Under the general fund on the next page, under this paragraph subsection, the first $8 million goes to, shall be distributed separate for the University of Wyoming. I mean, we're all over the place here. I understand we're trying to put a whole bunch of money into the general fund, but then now we're going here, 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 all over the place. How can that be transparent? I want somebody to explain to me how that's transparent and how that's easier to read than the reserve account, one line. I need somebody to help me out with that, because this honestly looks like I'm doing my taxes. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Are you ready for the question? Representative Harshman.
Thank you. I think, I guess I'll answer some of those as I see it. I'm not a sponsor of this bill, but I think a lot of this language is conforming language. I think the new language is the part that I have concern about, I guess, is when we say we're getting rid of an account, but we're going to create a general fund reserve amount that nobody will really be able to see. You won't be able to see that, you know, on page 3, line 18. And then the other problem with this is we're going to take more money out of the LISRA to backfill this 5%, because we're taking federal mineral royalties, that 2/3 share that used to go to the budget reserve account, and severance tax that used to go to the budget reserve account. Now we're putting it all in the general fund. So that 5% is going to grow. Then I think the other part of this is going to be, think about those really, none of you have served when we've had those big years of massive federal mineral royalties. So that'll grow the size of this general fund. It's going to keep the reserve amount the same. It's going to grow this thing pretty quickly. Then how does that affect the chief budget officer, the person just below this dais, his office? How does that affect his budget recommendations? Can he now recommend more? I mean, I read what this says about trying to be confined to this general fund reserve amount, which is going to be new to us, going to be new to our people and everybody. So my concern with this thing is it's less transparent. It's going to take this side little account, get rid of it. We've kept it on the side because the chief executive cannot spend out of it or profile out of it. We're going to get rid of that. And now we're going to have the LSRA standing there, and then that'll be the next second checking account. It's already turning into that. Look at this year. I can't believe the amount of money we have spent out of the LSRA. It's unprecedented. Took us decades to build that thing. We used a little bit during the last dip in 16, 17, 18, and now poof. And so now we're going to take away one in the middle and we're going to move this over, and that'll be like a second checking account. Be just spending money out of it like crazy. So I would urge caution on this. This system has been in place for a third of statehood, really ever since we've had mineral wealth. And that's what funds the budget reserve is severance tax and federal mineral royalties. And it's a way to take some of those excesses and put them off to the side. And then what do we do currently in the budget language? Anything in excess of the 5% budget reserve, we sweep to the LSRA. That's what we do at the end of every budget session. At the end of every 2 years, July 1st, gone. Now this says, yeah, we'll do that with the general fund reserve amount. Anything over that amount, it's going to be a higher amount. It's going to be less swept to savings and the opportunity to profile and spend more. Boy. So I'm going to vote no on this, and hopefully we get a standing division and the 68th Wyoming House can take out its first bill on general file. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. It's not the first one that we'll kill. Just be clear on that. We lost a transportation bill a couple days ago. No hard feelings here, though, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, the last speaker just took the words right out of my mouth, and the biggest concern that I have with this entire bill. We're going to take $300 million in federal mineral royalties. We're going to make them profilable, meaning that the governor can start, the chief executive can start to appropriate from that account. It's a little bit of checks and balances. We're the appropriators. We give him that open checking book, him or her, give them, any person that's in that office, that checkbook, and you give them a stronger amount of money to go after, I'm going to have a pretty solid belief that they're going to go after it and start writing that check. We're going to empty that thing out, and we're going to give them the availability to go after it. I am very happy to see that we finally have one of the sponsors up on this at a microphone to help us explain, because I'll be honest with you guys, I'm ready to filibuster. I haven't heard a single answer on any of the questions that have been raised on what we're trying to solve here. Well, we want to make it one checking account. Why? What's it doing? How are we going to fix things? Is it more transparent? Are we actually hiding? In my opinion, I believe there is a little bit of hiding here, and we're going to create a reserve amount, but that's in flux all the time. That reserve amount is also not in a different account, so how is that a reserve? It's actually sitting there. It's available to be spent. So now are we saying you can only appropriate up to 95% of something that's there? I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that are going on here. And for those of you that are brand new here, ladies and gentlemen, this is what this body does. We debate. We don't just take marching orders. We don't just get told this is how we need to vote on a bill. We debate, and we debate on the merits of the bill and whether or not this is good policy shift for the state of Wyoming for now and for future generations. I will be completely honest with you. I took a deep breath when I walked out of here. I needed to go outside, almost put my face in some snow because I was so heated. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated with the way that this body has chosen to debate these bills lately. So I go out there and I actually catch a former member of appropriations, and the former member of appropriations tells me, you know what? let it go. It doesn't matter. Knowing something about this, it's not that big of a deal. I said, it's not the bill. It's not the account. It's the principle of the matter. I'm going to shut my mouth here in about 2 seconds to let the good appropriator and the good sponsor of the bill, the first sponsor that I will name, that has actually showed up to answer some of these questions, because I'd like to hear some of those answers. Really disappointed.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know what disappointment's like. I'm disappointed right now. I would love to be able to go through this bill line by line and describe everything that it does and all the effects to it, but I can't do that. When I came into this process, I had to trust some people that knew far more than I did and follow their lead and try to understand as best I can. But I won't pretend to be able to stand up here and go toe-to-toe with people that probably forgot more about this process than I'll ever know. My understanding of it is that it's a very simple, even though it's 20, 22 pages, whatever it is, most of that is conforming language, but it's a very simple process that combines what have morphed into essentially the same kind of an account. They basically, now we have two checking accounts, and the idea is make it simpler and thereby more transparent. That's my primary understanding of it. I am disappointed in that I wish I could explain everything that's in here. Anybody that has looked at this understands it's complicated, and I think you can understand that it is. I would hope that rather than simply be combative, that former appropriators who do know more than I might be able to discuss the relative merits and let us all know what is going on. But barring that, my answer to all of you is I was taught a long time ago, if you're not confident to vote yes, don't vote yes. This bill goes down, we'll regroup, we'll come back, and we'll try it again. So if the former appropriators are willing, and I hope they would be, to explain in detail, fairly, what's happening here, I would like to learn more. If that doesn't happen, then I encourage you to vote no, and we'll come back and try it again.
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to go back to the question about local government because I think something might be happening in this bill that I actually like, but I'm not sure. So again, another question to put on the table, and that is, it appears that beyond the transfer of accounts and consolidating of money, there seems to be a codification of local distribution, which I would welcome. I think most of us would. And so I just don't know if that's what it's doing, but I think that might be what it's doing. And so again, that would be something when we have folks here that might know for that question to be answered, because I like the idea and have often thought we should codify direct distribution to local governments.
Representative Yen.
Madam Chairman, thank you. So members, I think the biggest concern is that I'm for repealing the budget reserve account. I think that's a good thing. I think the concern has always been each of these accounts, the second we repeal them, they have tip ins, tip outs, the revenue in and the revenue out. Where does it go? What happens to it? The problem is that there wasn't enough preparation from the members who support the bill on what those actually are. So when we're presenting a bill, the indication is to convince us to vote for the bill and against the status quo, right? We're changing the status quo. And without more information, it's really hard to be convinced that we should change the status quo other than saying, we're getting rid of an account. Okay, so what did the account do? What was the reason for the account? What goes into the account, what goes out of the account? All of those are important. So normally, I think for future bills, if you are presenting a Senate file, I would suggest that you help us understand everything that the bill does beforehand. I'll vote in favor of passing it out of committee of the whole, but before third reading, I would like to know what the bill does. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I appreciate the complexity. Truly, honestly, from the depths of my heart, it took me 4 years to understand any amount of this budgeting process, the tips in, tips outs, and I do not claim for even a second to understand half as much as the good former chairman of appropriations has forgotten, okay? But what I am going to challenge the rest of this body on is two things. Number one, we don't bring bills in here and throw them up to the floor and change major policy issues on this floor without being able to explain to the other 61 members of this body what it's doing. If you can't do it, you probably shouldn't be a co-sponsor. That's very scary. That reminds me of a very famous line coming out of our nation's capital that you have to pass a bill to see what's in it. So we're going to pass this law to find out what happens because we don't know what this bill actually does. I understand that. I actually sympathize with that. And I have stood side by side with our chief executive for multiple times in the belief that we need to simplify this. It's the tip ins and the tip outs that are actually the hardest part to understand, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the fact that we actually have a budget reserve account that's the problem. It's knowing that 2/3 of 1/3 of 1/6 of 1 penny comes into this account and then flows out to another account when this tips, like nobody knows. One person in this body, maybe two. I think it's a very valid discussion to have, but making a big policy choice like this, ladies and gentlemen, is not something where you walk up and you say, well, I don't know what this bill does. I wish I could help you understand it, but I don't even know what this bill is doing. I truly, truly hope as you cast your vote on this, whether it's today or third reading, you understand the implications of what we're doing. I am actually in agreement with the minority floor leader. I actually do believe that eliminating some of these accounts is not a bad idea. I'd just like somebody to explain it to me why it's not a good idea to keep it. Convince me.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a little on the local distribution, and the reason we have never codified that amount in statute is because sometimes that amount's varied. You know, for years, we've done 90 million. We went to 105 million. Then the last few years where we had some extra money, we went more than that, but we guaranteed it out of the budget reserve account. So it's generally been funded out of the general funds of the state, but we've guaranteed it with the budget reserve. So if we fell short, that those distributions would get made irregardless. So I think having the flexibility to address local distributions is really important to maintain.
Representative Baer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So a little bit off guard here, been down at the other chamber, but this is a pretty simple bill, folks. Everything that we do out of the BRA, we can do out of the general fund. They're both exactly the same type of checking account. Very straightforward. It's a thick bunch of papers because the BRA is referred to in a lot of places in statute. We're simply eliminating that account to simplify things so that our constituents can tell what we do. It's a very straightforward bill, and I think if you just look at the votes on this bill through its life, you can tell it's pretty straightforward. On for the bill.
Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Answer the good representative from Washtenaw County on the local government distribution. That's existing old language in the budget reserve account statutes. Again, this account was created in 1984 when we were kind of through the 70s mineral wealth, and the budget reserve is really, it's all mineral wealth. Right? We have this cap when we de-earmarked around, some of you here, turn of the century. So an amount over the 200 million cap flows of federal mineral royalties flows to the budget reserve, and it holds there. It's not budgeted, it's not profiled for spending, it's not, can't be grabbed by the chief executive, can't be appropriated. And same thing with the severance tax. So we started doing that around the turn of the century, taking 2/3 over the cap. So there's a cap that funds local governments, funds different things underneath the cap, but over the cap, that's where this extra money during good times flows. Budget reserve account. And so I think, again, I think the transparency issue for me, members, is I can look right now, page 3, line 18, I can see the transfer, $152 million. I think it's $555 from the LSRA to the budget reserve to maintain that 5% for cash flow. And now we're going to get rid of the budget reserve account. All that money's going to flow into the general fund. And so now it's still 5%, but it says on page 4, going over to page 5, 5% of this general fund reserve amount. So it's going to be 5% of a much bigger number. And so that's why this 152 that you can currently see in that kind of secondary checking / savings account, the budget reserve account, just think of the name of it, budget reserve account. Now that thing goes away, and so we have a new line in the general fund called the general fund reserve amount, and the general fund will be much bigger amount because it's going to get all of the mineral revenues. None of it's going to flow to the budget reserve. It's going to all flow to the general fund. So that 5% amount is going to grow by $40 million. And so this account will, page 3, line 18, will disappear from the public's view. And somehow we'll have to figure out how much is that 5%? Where is that on the goldenrod? I can't see it. What's that called again? It's called a budget reserve, or it's called a general fund reserve amount. I don't think that's very transparent. And I think it's a way to reduce our savings and frankly, grow appropriations. So on and against. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the debate.
Chairman Bear, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, folks, we had a discussion about this section of law and how we do have these spending or budget recommendation amounts, and that's what we're talking about. This is something that's a restriction on the executive, folks. It's not a restriction on this body, but it is a restriction on the executive, and when he creates a budget, what we anticipate him leaving in the accounts so that we can pay our bills. So we've been doing this for some time, we just haven't been consistently holding the executive accountable for staying within that amount. We constantly have these reserve amounts or expectations based on things like our estimates of income, our estimates of revenues in the future. So there's no change here, no change in the way we're spending, no change in the way we're savings. There are flows in and out of the BRA account, which are in this bill being transferred to the general fund. And then there are transfers out of the BRA account. And by the way, the BRA account is profilable by the executive, just like the general fund. So there's really no difference between checking account 1, the general fund, and checking account 2, the BRA. So we have this complexity that is completely unnecessary. This bill removes that complexity and allows us to show everything in one account, in and out. No extra transfers, no transfers that you might not notice because it's in a second checking account. It just simplifies everything for both us in this body and for your constituents. On and for the bill.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Bear's motion that when the committee of the whole rise to report, it does with the recommendation that Senate File 168 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The chair is in doubt. All those in favor, please stand. Thank you, members. All those opposed, please stand. Senate File 168 has passed the committee of the whole. Oh, by the vote of aye 37, no 17. Okay. Our next bill for consideration is Senate File 64. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 64, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz. Wyoming opposes mandatory electronic ID devices, livestock, an act relating to agriculture, livestock, and other animals. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 64 engrossed. Wyoming opposes mandatory electronic ID devices, livestock. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Davis, Eklund, Johnson, Ottman, Schmid, Strzok, Winter. Noes, Representative Provenza. Representative Winter, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Winter?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Bill number 64, or Senate File 64, do pass, and I further move the adoption of the committee of the whole amendment. Thank you.
I think there's 2 amendments.
Also, representative from the center part of the state will explain the bill.
So we have 2 amendments. It looks like Williams.
Representative Strzok.
Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Chairman. So this bill declares it to be the policy of the state that Wyoming opposes the federal mandatory electronic identification ear tag rule that has been promulgated by the federal government. And this bill doesn't ban these ear tags and allows cattle producers who seek to use them voluntary to do so. But it does keep the ones that do not want to use them from having to. Our Congresswoman has been leading the fight on this rule, which many producers believe is to be issued illegally. And this bill would make our state declare this our policy. Wyoming law provides for ways to identify livestock for traceability purposes, and these methods work. This bill does not change the law of Wyoming, and again, just serves to have Wyoming speak with one voice that we oppose the federal overreach of the ear tag rule. And so in short, that is what this bill is doing, and just to protect the users that don't want to be forced into this. And appreciate an eye on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. With your blessing, I would move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2 to Senate File 64 before Amendment number 1.
Please proceed.
Body, there was a Committee of the Whole Amendment on the other end of the hall that deleted state veterinarian and local veterinarian language and inserted Wyoming Livestock Board on page 5, line 14, but it did not correct similar language on page 1. And this amendment corrects the language on page 1 also. On page 1, line 5, it deletes state veterinarian, and on page 1, line 6, deletes local veterinarian and inserts Wyoming Livestock Board. I would appreciate an aye vote.
Question, having been called on Committee of the Whole Amendment number 2, please, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment has been adopted. Representative Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 64. Our Wyoming beef producers already have vaccination and testing requirements that they navigate when shipping or selling cattle across state lines. Section D would place a financial burden on those customers who buy our livestock across state lines. This financial burden would be reflected in lower prices paid to our producers, and this small amendment would remedy this unintended consequence of Senate File 64. On page 1, line 3, it strikes the word traceability. Correction, after traceability, it strikes the rest of that line. If you're following on your bill, and then line 4, it would strike, and line 5, it would delete of electronic ear tags, and then it would delete section D on page 5. And I would appreciate an aye vote.
Representative Banks?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and against this amendment, the way it reads is the buyers of livestock in receiving states shall be responsible for tagging livestock if their state mandates these EIDs. To me, it's just kind of a common sense provision that if the state of Wyoming doesn't require them, then if you're in a state that does, then you need to know the rules of your own state before transferring them back into that state. So I think this, it's kind of a buyer beware clause. You need to know the laws of your state, and to know that Wyoming has legal IDs under statute 11-18-117. And if we don't require this, then if your state does, then you need to know that. So that's all this provision is doing, on and against the amendment.
Representative Provenza?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. On and for the amendment, I had some folks in my county reach out to me that are producers that said, you're putting this onus on buyers, and what's going to end up happening is they're either not going to participate, they're going to say, we're going to take our business elsewhere, because we're telling them what to do. Another concern, so there's the concern of our ag producers who are trying to make a dollar, are now going to have to figure out how do they market themselves. The other concern, and I'll say, how would we like other states telling us what to do? Does that go well? Probably not. We are telling other states that they shall be responsible for tagging livestock in a certain way. No one is obligated to follow our state laws. They just are going to take their business elsewhere. That's not how we conduct business in the US of A. We can manage our people, we can manage our process, we can talk about what we want to do, but I can't tell any other state what they have to do. That's what this does. And because of that, there's concern of whether this portion of this bill is meeting the constitutional obligations that we have. So I would support the amendment if you want to support the bill.
Representative Davis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, we sent a bill out of this body to the other body. That was kind of the foundation for this. We're looking for the MOUs with these adjoining states that receive Wyoming livestock. You know, so this here just assures them that we are honoring our obligation and not requiring the IED or whatever the hell this thing is, EID or whatever the heck it is, this form of identification. You know, if we have the MOU where we currently are operating between these states, this is a no-brainer. I mean, we don't even need it. So this is just for, if that currently doesn't exist, then we need to address that with this bill by saying, hey, beware, you know, I've got a truck here I'm selling, it's got 3 flat tires and you need to put the 4th one on or something like that, you know. So the amendment is not good, so I would resist the amendment.
Representative Ottman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would just say I am against the amendment as well. We are primarily an export state. So if we don't desire that these tags are used, then we should not be forced to do that for the sales. As the previous representative said, we're looking at MOUs to get licensing or whatever, to get agreements across the line, that we're all in agreement the best way to do it. So against the amendment.
Representative Larson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And as I read this bill, this bill is really a vague document, and I couldn't understand, and I appreciate this amendment and support it, but I couldn't understand why it's our responsibility to tell individual buyers what the laws of their state require and how they have to comply with them. If I'm going to buy cattle from another state or another country and bring them into Wyoming, it's my responsibility as a buyer from Wyoming to understand what Wyoming laws require me to do. And I don't understand the downside of this amendment. I think it cleans up a lot of this, that if their state requires these electronic identification tags, which I agree we don't like, then the buyer's going to have to be responsible, if they're not on the cattle he buys here, to have them be responsible for them. Thank you. I like the amendment. Please vote for it.
Representative Davis?
And this amendment does not apply to all classification of cattle. There's only certain cattle that this amendment would apply for, not all the cattle that ship in and out of the state of Wyoming. So that it's, I believe, the ones that are of certain age and go to slaughter, et cetera, et cetera. So there are some nuances in there. So it's not every head of cattle that leave this state have to have this tag in it. Just a little clarification. Oop.
Representative Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to read the section D, just to remind everybody what we're actually talking about here. The buyers of livestock in receiving states shall be responsible for tagging livestock if an electronic identification device requirement is mandated in the receiving state, unless the Wyoming livestock owner has voluntarily utilized electronic identification devices. So how this works in the sale barn or in the feedlot is any good cattle buyer, he knows his expenses before he buys those cattle, and he just discounts those cattle accordingly because margins are usually very tight, and that directly affects the price that he's willing or able to pay. And so this amendment is in the best interests of our Wyoming beef producers. Vote aye, please.
Representative Strzok?
Thank you, Chairwoman. So what I'm seeing with this amendment, it kind of will take this bill and make it useless then, because what this bill is to keep us from having to, as producers, if we don't want to put the tags in. So it's just informing the other states, hey, we don't have to do this. If you want them, then you go ahead and put them in. So if we put this amendment on, we've kind of made this bill useless. So a no amendment, please.
Representative Eklund.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I think we need to understand that possibly this bill would be useless regardless. And the reason I say that is none of these cattle are gonna get a health certificate and be inspected to go across state lines into another state unless they comply with the federal laws. So I like this amendment because this indicates, this Part D indicates that buyers of livestock in receiving states have to be responsible, and I think it'll scare them away. And I just can't see scaring away a few buyers if they were to look at the statute that way. But irregardless whether they do it or not, they're not going to be able to move across state lines without the proper health certificate.
Representative Yen.
Madam Chairman, I think that, well, one, I'm not sure if this bill really does a lot except for shake its fist, but two, on those lines in the amendment, I'm not sure it does anything at all. So, right, so either the buyers, there are two options, right? The buyers in livestock shall be responsible for tagging livestock, or the owner is going to voluntarily tag their own. If the federal rule requires that no matter what, to move livestock across state lines, it has to be tagged, someone's going to tag it. So all the language is saying either the buyer does it or the owner does it, so someone's going to do it. The language is just confusing and doesn't really do anything. So some folks who oppose the amendment explain to me what it does if those are the only two real options, right? It's either the buyer or the seller. One of those groups are going to have to tag to move it across state lines. So what's the point of this language at all?
Representative Banks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm glad now it's the ranchers going to battle on the floor other than the lawyers. Get a little change of pace here. So that's exactly right. What we're trying to say here is if I'm selling my cattle and the state of Wyoming, because of legislation we've passed saying we are not going to mandate these EIDs, then it's not my responsibility to make sure that if somebody is coming out of another state below us and buying my cattle, that I have to make sure that that they're in compliance with their own state law. That should be their responsibility. And knowing beforehand if I'm going to sell those cattle to a state that has that mandate, how are we going to know that? This is just saying that if your state requires it and you buy cattle from us in the state of Wyoming where we're not going to require it, then it'll be your responsibility to make sure that they have those tags. Because beforehand, I'm not going to put them in. Because the state of Wyoming isn't going to mandate them, I'm not going to put them in. So it'll be your responsibility. That's what we're going to say. That's what this bill says. And so going forward with that and going forward with the bill that we already passed out of this body, I'd be on and against the amendment.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more. Oh, God, I lost it. Is it there? Oh, I can't remember now. The other thing is, it's no different when you're marketing your cattle, okay? These cows here have this shot, they've been weaned, they've been dust, then this. Oh, and by the way, they don't have that tag in it. So it's pretty simple to get the information out there to the buyer. So I don't see a problem with not putting this amendment in there, or I'm against the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And just a point is, for those states that have decided to join in with this federal mandate, last August, the Department of Agriculture said they ran out of the tags anyway. So it's a quagmire and a mess of things. So I would think that people would be very, I'm against the amendment.
Question having been called. All those in favor of the committee of whole amendment number 1, say aye. Opposed, no. The committee of the whole amendment number 1 has failed. We are back on the bill. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If the good brainer of the bill could help me understand, and I understood, I believe, what we're trying to do in this bill is set policy and establish, and I get that, and I don't disagree that we don't like this federal requirement, and so we're trying to establish some policy in saying what we can and can't do, establish some, working with manufacturers that produce the tags, that we're working with other states to develop agreements. The Livestock Board will inform producers. I think that those are the pieces of this bill that I think are valid to be in a bill. What I can't understand, and if you could help me, is starting on the bottom of page 1 and going page 2, page 3, page 4, well, to the top of page 4. What is the value of all of those legislative findings to this bill? And why do they need to be in here? We, as I read them, it is similar to taking the conversations that we've just had on the Committee of the Whole amendment and printing them and having them be part of the bill. They just, they're observations, they're conclusions. There's some of them that are speculative, but why do they need to be part of this bill? So I think that it adds to the length of the bill, and I don't think that it adds to the quality of the bill. So help me understand, please.
Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Well, besides clarifying that some of it here is actually telling everybody we already have these things put into place. And I think it's just mostly clarifying why we don't need it. And that would be my answer to it. Well, and considering I didn't write the bill either, so thank you.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I had similar questions, and the response that I got was that it clarifies the bill, but I think there's some confusing language in the first 5 pages. And I think when we add too many words in our statute books, we don't necessarily clarify much, but it says things like, if you go to the top of page 5, it says Wyoming shall demand that the United States Department of Agriculture. What is that? I'm not really quite sure what that means. I was told that the answer to that question is that the Wyoming Livestock Board will, but it doesn't direct the Wyoming Livestock Board to do anything. It says Wyoming shall demand. Does that mean me? Do I go demand it? Does that mean my county commission? Does that mean the state veterinarian? This language that is included in the first 5 pages is all better suited as resolution. And if you want to do that, then you can clarify to the courts what you mean by not putting it in our green book. Then the language is out there. You've clarified what we're doing. We're shaking our fists again. We're mad. Here we go. But it's not going in a green book for the rest of eternity. How's this going to read in 20 years? I mean, when we're out of context. Our green books are meant to last for a long time. That's why we don't put findings in them. That's why we don't put our feelings in our statutes. You want to put your feelings in something, you can put it in the chapter book. We should probably remove this language.
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Winter's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with a recommendation that Senate File 64 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. What's that? What? Step 9. Oh. Senate File 64 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 84. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 84, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz. County of Origin Label, USA Beef, an act relating to food labeling. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 84 engrossed. Country of Origin Label, USA Beef. Respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Davis, Eklund, Johnson, Ottman, Schmid, Strzok, Winter. Noes, Representative Provenza. Representative Winter, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Winter?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Bill number 84 do pass, and I further move the adoption of this Committee of the Whole amendment. And representative from the Green River Country will explain the bill.
Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm just going to give you some highlights of this great Wyoming bill. Senate File 84 mandates country of origin labeling for beef products. Specifically, it requires that beef derived from cattle born, raised, slaughtered, and processed in the United States be clearly labeled as a product of the United States. The bill also defines beef as any meat from cattle, including veal. And the legislation aims to provide consumers with clear information about the origin of the beef products, and this bill is set to take effect on July 1st, 2025. Senate File 69 also can enhance consumer transparency by mandating clear labeling of beef products born, raised, slaughtered, and processed in the U.S. Consumers can make informed purchasing decisions based on product origin. Senate File 69 also supports domestic producers by highlighting U.S. source beef. It aims to encourage consumers to choose domestic products, potentially boosting sales for our local ranchers and contributing to the national economy. And to wrap things up, all the aspects of Senate File 69 collectively aim to benefit our consumers, our producers, and our local communities by promoting transparency and supporting domestic agriculture. So I urge the body to give a big thumbs up for this bill. Thank you.
Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The good Chairman of Ag did move my Committee of the Whole amendment, that I'd like to describe that amendment real quickly and dispatch that.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So if you look at this Committee of the Whole amendment, we're just simply adding small language here to help out grocers that don't want to be in violation of this bill if they happen to have something that they are not sure of the origin on. And so this includes them. It says and process, so it allows grocers and those wholesalers and retailers that might be handling beef or other meats that they are not sure of, and it just makes sure that there's no label saying that it is made in America. if they're not sure. So with that, I would ask for your aye vote on the Committee of the Whole amendment. And Madam Chair, would you like me to move it? I know that the Chairman of Ag did move it.
Yes.
So I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Senate File 84 and ask for your aye vote.
Okay, question being called. Oh, Representative Schmidt? No? Okay. Question have being called. All in favor of the Standing Committee Amendment number 1, say aye. All those opposed, no. Great. The Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. The Committee of the Whole Amendment has been adopted. Thank you. We are back on the bill. Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I must apologize to the body. In my last description of the bill, I was referencing Senate File 69. It should be Senate File 84. I'm not going to repeat all of that, but except that this is a great Wyoming bill that supports our great agricultural community. So I urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think potentially that last amendment may have helped solve some of the concerns that I had with the bill, but I just want to walk through what the testimony was from our agency that oversees our ag. They had concerns that they can't track national cattle the same way that they can track Wyoming beef. And so one of the things that I think that this bill could do, and we could make the bill even better, is by saying, let's do this for Wyoming beef, where we know where they're born, we know where they're raised, we know where they're slaughtered, and give our producers here in Wyoming a better chance of having a tag on their meat that says, made in Wyoming. As much as I want to support a national sticker, it didn't sound like that process worked out as well. But what we can do is say, I'm here for Wyoming beef, and I want to support Wyoming producers. And I think if we tailor the bill to Wyoming, then I think it does just that, and it even gives our producers here an even bigger leg up. So I will be bringing language likely on second reading so we can have that conversation, but that was my heartburn with the bill in committee. There's what we want, and then there's implementation. And I just want to make sure that the bill we bring forward helps the people of Wyoming and helps our producers.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the reference to amendments that are coming. And while we're thinking about those amendments, I'd add a little more to the conversation. Maybe we could make this bill better in the next 2 readings. I'm a strong supporter of country of origin labeling. Cool. But this bill has more questions for me right now than it has answers. I have constituents who are Wyoming beef producers who raise, harvest, and market their product in county. And the way I read this bill, they would be required to label their Wyoming beef as product of the United States of America. And my small Wyoming beef producers are not very excited about another burden being placed on them as they sell their Wyoming beef locally. I'm not sure this bill can be enforced. And if it can, I'm not sure who will enforce it. I believe as written, it will put more burden on Wyoming producers and on Wyoming retailers. I'm not yet persuaded that this is a cool bill, even though it does have a cool title.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You know, the bill is to address USA beef, not Wyoming. If we're looking for the Wyoming motto on there, there's 6 processing plants in the state of Wyoming that we can put the Wyoming logo on. They are curtailed by the amount of cattle that they can process and get out to the distributors. What this bill here is trying to address, which shouldn't be that hard because through the, we can track our beef, what beef is tainted, what beef isn't. You know, when you get a recall, they know where it come from. So what all we're looking for here is that this beef is a product of the US of A. Okay, I think that's the intent of this bill. It doesn't really have a lot to do with Wyoming. Wyoming can already market its own beef. You know, in our particular area down there, we would have to take our beef to a USDA certified slaughter plant, which is across the border. So in order for that to be labeled product of Wyoming, it has to be processed, slaughtered, processed, and labeled in Wyoming. Well, because I live 38 miles from Colorado, the closest plant, I can't put that Wyoming beef label on that beef, even though it was raised here from start to finish, but I have to take it across the border to process it. So that I can't put that label on there. That's just one of them issues. That's why we only have 6 places in the state of Wyoming that we can do this. Just for clarification. So anyway, the intent of the bill is to give us U.S. beef, not a product of Wyoming.
Representative Yen.
Madam Chairman, thank you. So not opposed to the bill. I do think the committee of the whole amendment that we adopted kind of creates a problem. So the enforcement mechanism, I think, is the real question. So when we say the amendment made it so we could, so we shall do 2 things. If we know for sure that it is American-only beef, we shall label it as American beef. If we don't know, we shall not label it as American beef. So the question becomes for me, who doesn't know and who is allowed to not know? And if I'm a producer or a retailer or any other person that has to put the label on it, if I don't know, do I just leave the label off? But then does someone come and enforce the rule saying, I know that another third party says, I know it's American beef, you should have put the label on it. So I think this bill still needs some work to figure out whether the label should or should not be on there, depending on who actually knows whether the animal has been completely gone through its entire life cycle in America. So I'll vote aye now, but we need to fix this bill, because otherwise anyone that has to apply the label needs to figure out, do they apply the label now or do they not? It depends, maybe, I don't know.
Any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Winter's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it does so with recommendation that Senate File 84 do pass. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. That was a weak no. The Senate File 84 passes. The next bill for our, wait, hold on. Okay, specifically, number 8? Number 9. Senate File 84 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 32. The reading clerk will read the bill. Thank you. I got it.
Senate File 32, sponsored by Transportation, Unpaved Roads, Speed Limits, Amendments, and Act Relating to Speed Limits. I'm still looking for a standing committee report on that, so I don't know. Who's that?
Where's the chair?
I have no idea. 8.
Okay.
I don't know who the chairman is. I don't have a stand.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman?
You bet you can't find it anywhere.
What happens? Is the Vice Chairman of Transportation want to present this? Representative Tarver.
Yeah, I move that when, let's see here. Move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that the bill Senate File 32 do pass. And I guess I'll let who would like to explain this? The gentleman moving to the podium in the front here.
Representative Geringer.
Madam Chair, if you'll recall, sorry, that was loud. If you'll recall, body, we did hear this bill a little while back. It's the one that Representative Brown mentioned that we killed before. It did get resurrected. This has to do with the unpaved road speed limits, and we've actually had a lot of discussion. I won't go over everything we talked about before, but I personally have had a bunch of discussion between the county commissioners, the county engineers and road supervisors, and quite a few other folks, YDOT included. I've got an amendment coming up, but for the sake of brevity here, I will, unless there are any questions for me directly, I'll let the next amendment go, and then we can have more discussion about what my amendment might bring as well.
So we have Committee of the Whole, Alaman. Representative Alaman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have an amendment to put on this bill.
Would you like to move?
I move to the Committee of the Whole, Amendment Number 3 to Senate File 32, and ask for your favorable consideration. My whole problem, I don't have a problem with the bill, other than, once again, it's telling me how fast I can go on my own private road. You know, it's private property. And I just do not think that this body has the right to tell somebody who owns private property how fast they can go on it. You know, that would be somewhat like the federal government or the state government telling you that your kids can't run in the house. That's your decision, not the government's. And it's a bill that will never be enforced. So I don't know why we're going to put something into our green books that we don't even plan on enforcing. Thank you.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ladies and gentlemen, deja vu all over again, and my apologies. The joys of working as a citizen legislature is when your boss calls, you typically can answer that phone call really quick and take that call and just find out that your bill is up on the Committee of the Whole. And so my apologies for not bringing that, and appreciate my good Vice Chairman for jumping to the rescue there. This particular amendment, ladies and gentlemen, again, it's the same exact thing that I said last time when we defeated this the first time, is this really does actually muddy the waters more than it helps. This bill is strictly on county-owned roads, and that's actually the label of this statute that it fits in. There is, if you go read and open up the green books, it literally says county roads. This does not have anything to do with private roads whatsoever. And we're already prohibited from enforcing any type of speed limit or anything along those lines on a private road. So I would resist this amendment only for the simple fact that we don't need it, number one, but number two, it saves a whole bunch of time and effort on our staff to re-engross this bill, send it back across the hallway, for them to go, why in the world are we putting this in there? And do we need to concur with this change? And then they appoint a conference committee and all sorts of stuff. So trying to save staff and time on this and ease the fears that this is not going to be instituted on private roads whatsoever. This is only county roads. And as I'm sure many of you heard from the county commissioners on this, we are trying to get the county commissioners the availability to hear their constituents' concern about the county road speed limits, and that's all we're trying to do. So on and against the amendment, still for the bill. Thank you.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have unintended consequences of this act if we do pass it, and I think we might want to nickname it the Speed Trap Revenue Restoration Act. That's all I have to say.
Point of order.
What is your point?
Can we stay on the amendment, please?
Thank you. Representative Filer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I didn't think I was going to talk on this, but now that I think about it, on and for the amendment, only for the reason is, what if you have an easement that's owned by the county and your road is on that easement? Does that make it county property still? But it's still really considered a private road because you're the one that's using the easement and has to maintain it. That's just my question. So I may be on and for that if one of the folks there from that good committee or the person that brought the amendment can answer that for me.
Representative Larson.
My understanding, if it's the county's easement, it's the county's road. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Any other discussion? Representative Tarver.
Madam Chairman, so page 2, lines 5 and 6, respective corporate jurisdiction, highways within their respective corporate jurisdiction pretty much eliminates private roads. So, I mean, I think that solves the problem that this amendment is trying to solve. On and against the amendment.
Any further discussion? Okay. So question having been called, all those in favor of the Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 3, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 3 has not been adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number, what are we on, 4, and ask for your favorable consideration. And here's the explanation. I referenced it just a little bit ago. We had a lot of discussion back and forth. In fact, just finally got the latest language integrated for this amendment, and I'll kind of walk you through it here. It's getting rid of the subsection F and rewriting it basically to really look at a couple of things here. One, there was the concern by the county engineers and road supervisors that the speed limit by statute currently is 55. The beginning of this process for them was actually just looking to get it to 45, and then it kind of escalated from there. The commissioners have a different idea of where things needed to go, and so what subsection F does is really allows the local authority, being the county, to decrease that speed limit from 55 to 45 on their own without a speed study. And the reason for that without the speed study is that we already do have a study from the University of Wyoming that was conducted that 45 tended to be that 85th percentile that we talked about before. So that's really generally the accepted speed limit anyway. And then we also have one of the engineering manuals that references the additional standards actually that have to be implemented or should be implemented with a road that has a speed limit of 55 versus 45. So what this does is gives local control to the commissioners in accordance with just consulting with their engineer or road supervisor and law enforcement to be able to lower from 55 to 45. So as an example, in the county where the water is sweet, they have something on the order of 600 miles of road. All of a majority of those roads actually are under statute 55 miles an hour when they really should be 45, based on the engineering judgment. If they tried to do a study for all 600 miles of that road, it would be very extensive. And so this allows the county commission to be able to lower sections of road much easier, but only within the framework of 55 to 45. We start to get a little bit convoluted if we start talking about an even lower drop, where you might run into some issues of, say, truck traffic that is required to go at a lower speed and is going up a hill, and there's plenty of instances where traffic will try to pass slower. Traffic behind will try to pass the slower traffic in front. And so we want to avoid some of those head-on situations. And so this kind of gives a little bit of flexibility that the commissioners want, as well as kind of fits within the guidelines that the county engineers are looking for. Secondly, we're looking at subsection G, which when they need to be a little more proactive on lowering even further, and it could be 55 down to something lower than 45, 35, whatever, or taking something from 45 down to 20 because of conditions in that county. This gives them the flexibility to implement a temporary reduction, again, in consultation with the county engineer and law enforcement, and be able to drop that while at the same time getting the speed study going, so that they can justify that for more of a long-term basis if it needs to be. And so, again, when we're trying to legislate on the go here, this is kind of what we're coming to, is driving not necessarily a total and complete consensus between all the parties involved, but at least trying to get to a point where it listens to the concerns of the commissioners, listens to the concerns of the design professionals, and coming up with something that might work a little bit better. There are some guidelines on how long that temporary speed can be in place if they've got access to their own in-house engineer or a consulting engineer that they want to pay for. Then that's one route. If they use the University of Wyoming Technology Transfer Center, which offers the speed studies for free, sometimes those can take a little bit longer, so we've allowed a little bit extra time in that. And so would love to get your support on this, and would stand for any questions.
Representative Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the good bringer of the amendment. I'm on the fence about this amendment, but I appreciate the debate on it and you bringing it. So you mentioned local control and that this amendment provides that. And for some of our counties, I would, in lieu of saying local control, I would say more power. My question to the bringer of the amendment is, you talk about, on page 1, line 33, you talk about temporarily establishing a speed. And you elaborate, you touched a little bit about that, whether or not a community uses their local engineer or they use the land grant university for assistance. So temporary establish could look different in different communities, and we're talking about a state law here. So just curious if you can touch a little bit more on that.
Representative Geringer?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the good representative. That was an effort to allow the flexibility to put the new speed limit in place to account for conditions on the ground right then. And so it has to do, one of the examples that was brought up was a county north of here that has experienced an increase in fracking truck traffic, and how that was going through a neighborhood, county rural subdivision, and the increased truck traffic, they were noticing speeds that seemed to be excessive. And so that the county commissioners want to be able to respond to the that concern and take care of the issue, but yet by saying it's temporary in nature and putting some guidelines on what that temporary means, then it does allow, then we get the temporary potentially lowering of the speed limit, and then the speed study to either back it up or say, wait a minute, we need to look at this a little bit differently, and we need to establish a new speed limit. And so that language of how temporary it is really is contained further down in and some of the triggers that occur to make that happen by initiating the speed study, and whether it's done by the consulting engineer or T-squared.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On and against the amendment because I think it muddies the road. Certainly there are times when a study might be of value. But if you think about the county roads and where you live, the amount of time, especially if, like I did, I grew up around those county roads. I know them frankly like the back of my hand. I know where the blind corners are. I know where the road suddenly slips off, those sorts of things. The department that patrols those roads knows them just as well or even better. This is a really simple bill as I see it, and all it's saying is let's allow local people to set their local speed limits. If you want to have a study, if there are reasons for doing that, you could certainly still do that. I just think we're making this a lot more complicated than it needs to be, and so I would be against this amendment.
Representative Tarver.
Madam Chairman, thank you. The previous speaker nailed exactly the way I was thinking. And then the good representative from this county pointed out to me, here's the problem with it as it sits without this amendment. Okay, so you've got influx of traffic, and the traffic has big fans. They make a lot of dust. They may or may not be speeding. We've seen this over and over, but they do make more dust, and it looks like they're speeding. So putting this in there will give them a temporary, the county commissioners would have a temporary time frame that they can lower that to address the concerns of the public. But the public's concerns may not be accurate because they see the dust, they see the influx of traffic, they think that they're speeding. This gives them, well, I already forgot, 60 or 90 days, whatever's in the amendment, to lower this. And the speed study is to protect the county commissioners. So it's to help them, not to hurt them. Because a lot of times if we put this forth without this amendment, you may see a lot of speed reductions, and for no good reason, because when this influx of traffic is gone, then everyone's going to be expected to go 25 mile an hour. So then we'll have a whole influx of complaints that direction. So the speed study is really just to prove that there is a problem. It really helps this bill. It's not designed to weaken it.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a really good example of a committee bill that goes through the process. We hear the concern, we draft a bill, and then you get a brand new set of eyes that comes in and takes a look at the bill and says, what are you guys doing? We could do this a lot better and a lot more succinctly. Now, granted, as the other good representative, my seatmate there says, this is legislating on the fly. He's exactly right. But what I will say is this is probably one of the best forms of a compromise I've seen developed in a very long time. Because I had a very strong inclination to come up here and say, fight this. I don't want this. I think the county commissioners should have complete and total autonomy of their county roads. But then I also had the engineers come back and kind of yell at my inbox saying, look, I'm not going to stamp on any of this kind of stuff. And you're putting me at danger and you're putting me at risk. And not only that, but you're not allowing me as the engineer for this community to set standards. So what did the good engineer, recovering engineer, my seatmate say? Let's do it the long way, but give a short way to get there until we have that study done. And that's exactly what this does. And I agree, he's gutted my bill, yet another transportation bill that is just, it was perfect when it started, but you know, we made it better. So it's a good compromise. I don't think that it's perfect, but I do think that this puts structure to, hey, county commissioners, you can go lower the speed limit. You can do it for a temporary amount of time, but in an effort to keep that there and make sure that it's there, we need those engineers to stamp on this. I'm a little leery of giving engineers more authority than they already have, but I think this is a good compromise, and I would urge acceptance of this amendment. Vote aye.
Representative Haroldson?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So just a question for the bringer. I know one of the concerns was the cost of speed studies and the burden that would place. Obviously, we are reintroducing that burden here. Do we have any idea, any numbers of what these speed studies cost and if that would be prohibitive of this process, if the speed study would be an issue? So just a question on that.
Representative Geringer?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the change in pronunciation there, too. To the good representative that just spoke, I'll take your point first. There's two routes to go here. One is using the Technology Transfer Center from the university over the hill, and that's free. And that's why we have that as a separate item. That was actually based on coming back to the county commissioners with an idea. They said, hey, how about we kind of break out these timelines a little bit separately here so that we can accommodate either a faster approach or the slower approach and be able to modify that timeline just a little bit. So there's the free approach, that's one. And then in doing a kind of a relative survey from getting that information from the county engineers and road supervisors, I've heard anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000. Maybe up to 15, depending on how complicated it is. And so, but that's not an option that has to be done. It's not something that has to place a burden on the county. And there's also maybe something in between there where if the county has the ability to collect data themselves or use, say in the case of the county that we're in right now, there's an metropolitan planning organization that also has some traffic counting devices that can help in determining the data first, and then that can go out to an engineer. So we've got all sorts of different ways to approach this, but there is free all the way up to, and I won't limit it at $15,000, it just depends. But the general idea I've heard is somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 12. And then to the good representative from the county in the central north, I would also say that when we talk about locals knowing roads like the back of their hand, that's one thing. But when we're talking about a bunch of trucks or people that don't travel those county roads on a regular basis, they do maybe need some other idea of what conditions might be. And part of the speed study is not just determining speeds. It factors in those blind corners and the construction of the roadway, the shoulders, how steep they are, the width of the roadway, and all those sorts of things. And so there is more nuance than just speed, and that's part of the rules that they follow when they do the speed study. And then as far as my seatmate over here that talks about giving engineers more control, I would actually say that currently, the way it sits, there's actually control both ways with the commissioners being able to actually set the speed limits based on the results of the speed study. And also they can initiate that process just currently. So if we really wanted to uncomplicate it, we kill the bill entirely, which is what we did initially. I don't think that is the right approach now, given the feedback that I've gotten and the process that we went through to actually arrive at this amendment. I think it's a good compromise, and I would say in any sort of negotiation, when both parties leave a little bit unsatisfied, you're probably somewhere close to middle ground, and that's where I feel like we kind of are. We may see some adjustments from here in subsequent readings, but I think right now this is a good spot to be in, and I would encourage, if you get feedback from your local commissioners, let's talk some more. Let's see if we can make it even better. But I would say on this one, let's get this amendment passed.
Question have being called. All those in favor of the Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 4, say aye. Opposed, no. The Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 4 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Question being called. All those in favor of Vice Chairman Tarver's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with recommendation that House Senate File 32 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Okay. Senate File 32 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 63. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 63, sponsored by Senator Crago. State Lands Fencing 2, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 63 engrossed. State Lands Fencing 2. Respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Davis, Eklund, Ottman, Provenza, Schmid, Strzok, Winter. Noes, Representative Johnson. Representative Winter, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Winters?
Tell him not to move the Committee of the Whole.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Bill number
Senate File
63 do pass. I further move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole amendment.
Point of order.
What is your point?
Standing committee amendment is what a chairman can move. He cannot move a committee of the whole amendment. We have done it wrong 3 times. We cannot continue down that path.
Thank you. So does he need to go back up and move the, Chairman, would you need to go back up and move? Representative Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman, so I bring to this body Senate File 63, the engrossed version, asking for your favorable consideration. So during the interim, the Joint Ag Committee was presented with an issue to try and solve related to fencing of state lands. After much discussion, we learned about a kind of a complicated loophole that we're going to try and close. So we attempted to create a bill as a committee, and it didn't quite reach to where we needed. So this was kind of a collaborated effort to bring out this bill that I bring before you at this time. And if you look at this bill, it creates a new section, 1128-106, and it basically is a compromise of the approach that we want to take. You notice it doesn't apply when the leaseholder is a bordering landowner. What we don't want to do is be able to have the leaseholder charge the state for building a fence for his own management purposes. What we're trying to do is keep the state lands in the same realm as everybody else, where it applies to keeping livestock off of each other's property. So this bill states simply, if a landowner whose property adjoins state lands on which landowner does not hold a lease may construct a lawful partition fence along state lands in the Office of State Lands and Investments, or if the state lands are currently leased, the leasee of the state land shall pay for 1/2 of the actual cost of the construction of the lawful partition fence. The same as with other landowners around the state. Trying to bring an end to this conflict where we have people being cited for trespass when they don't hold the lease. And so trying to bring everything equal and on a level playing field. If everything's going to be a fence out state, including state lands, they're going to have to be equal and on that same playing field with as if it were private lands as well. This is a good neighbor bill. This is a bill that says we want to be good neighbors just like everybody else, and we want to have equity between landowners. And so this just closes that loophole and brings us into a good place with between our landowners, so that we don't have landowners arguing on the floor like we just did on the last beef bill. So anyway, asking for your favorable consideration.
Representative Johnson, and please move your committee of the whole amendment.
Yeah, I would like to pull my amendment at this time. I would like to withdraw my amendment at this time. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Any discussion on the bill? Speaker Nyman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess just to give the body a little bit of more background on what we're dealing with. Up in my part of the country was part of the catalyst that created the need for this. What we're dealing with is when our state lands are leased, many times they're unfenced. And many times it creates a real problem for the folks that are the adjoining landowners to these state lands. Simply, this bill will allow for both property owners, no different than if the good representatives that are both standing up there in the front of the building right now having a conversation had a property fence line. They are both required to pay for half of a statutorily designed fence. Now, we're not talking about somebody comes in and purchases a piece of property that's right next to them and wants to build a really nice estate, and we're going to put in poly fencing or pipe fencing or welded or whatever. We're talking about what is described in the statutes as a legal fence in the state of Wyoming in an effort to be able to create a dividing line between property owners. The state of Wyoming being one property owner and the other one being the other property owner. And that is what the attempt of this bill is to be able to allow, if the state of Wyoming were to lease a school section or an 80 or a piece of property of any determined size, and there are unfenced sections of that, and the adjacent landowner did not get the bid to be able to utilize that piece of property, then either the leasee who has it, who got the bid, gets it, or if the adjoining landowner wants to build a fence on that state line, that the state of Wyoming, like the other property owner, the adjacent landowner, which they share a common property boundary, are responsible to pay for half of that fencing. So in many times, and we have laws that if those cattle get over on, or sheep or whatever, would happen to get off of the private lands over onto the state lands, we can be fined. There are laws definitely that will fine them. But see, it was like, well, it's a fence out state. If you want to build a fence, that's at your expense. Well, the problem that is created, ladies and gentlemen, is that the state is leasing grounds with no responsibility for providing a fence line in a property owner setting. So the responsibility falls to whoever doesn't want the cattle on them. So you got to fence it out. Well, I've got a situation up in my part of the country that has created a major hardship where we've got properties that have some access, but not complete access, and these properties are completely unfenced. So legally right now, the way this is set up, a landowner could get access to that property, which is not fenced, back in there, dump a load of livestock in there, and say, if you don't want my cows on your land, you better fence it out at your own expense. And I would hope that all of you would be able to realize the problems that can create immediately. And so, and we talk about country, and that's a caveat that many people don't realize. If you'd come up into my country and in a lot of the country around the state of Wyoming, there's country that is so incredibly rough, it's almost impossible to fence. In fact, can potentially be 50 to 60,000. I've got one guy up there that ended up having a bill that he was projected to look at over $135,000 to put in a fairly short chunk of fence in some extremely rough country. So it creates the situation where that landowner really would have to take that full responsibility. What this is asking it to do is if there's already an existing fence, the state of Wyoming, if they've not leased it, then they're responsible for half the maintenance, or whoever leases that land from the state would be required for half the maintenance, along with the adjacent landowner. And so if you're going to lease ground, the state of Wyoming needs to step up to the plate and be a property owner, which they are, and they should be required to pay for half of the maintenance on property boundaries. We're not talking about internal cross fencing. We're talking about only fences that are on a property line that are the responsibility of both owners, one being the state of Wyoming, the other being the adjacent landowner. They share responsibility, and that's what this is trying to do, is to make the state of Wyoming now a property owner that shares in the responsibility and the liability of maintaining a property boundary. So just hopefully for some clarification. That might be clear as mud, but we're dealing with it in real time in my country, and it's not fun, ladies and gentlemen.
Representative Nichols?
Thank you. I'm just curious about the testimony of state lands during when this bill was being reviewed. You know, my guess is we're talking about enough fence to go back and forth across the United States probably twice. If you take all of the state lands and all of the sections that are adjacent to all various property owners. And so the cost to the state to implement this will be in the millions of dollars. I mean, I'm just guessing. I mean, just in the property that I'm intimately familiar with, we're talking probably three miles of fence. And if you take all the neighbors in Fremont County around that property, you're talking thousands and thousands of miles of fence. Theoretically, so I'm just wondering what that number is. And so then I'm trying to figure out implementation, because you have existing leases, whether it's 5-year or 10 years typically, and you probably can enforce it on existing leases, but in other words, you can't recoup those dollars, because what's going to happen, the only way the state will be able to pay for this is to start increasing all of their leases. And so when they come due, they're going to have to increase those leases. So all the ranchers will start paying double or triple or quadruple what you're paying now on state land leases. So there has to be a cause and effect to implement this. And so that's what I'm just curious on how you put this all together. Then, a boundary fence, theoretically, a landlocked state lease has 4 boundaries around it, and that's to the landowner around it. So you could actually then require the state to fence that 40 or that 60 or whatever it is, or 180, and fence all that. So then now you're even though they're landlocked, you're going to force the state to help you sectionalize your property so that you can, it's easier for you to move your cattle from space to space and maximize your grass usage. So there's just lots of complicated components to this, other than just saying you're going to have to pay for half of it. And so I'm just curious what was presented by state lands and how they could afford it, what they can do it. Wyoming is a fence-out state by common law and by practice. What that does mean is if it's another private property owner, they have to pay half of that fence. It's not always easy to go collect it, because I've tried that a few times, and half the time the lawsuits cost more than a darn fence that you're fighting over. But they're just complicated issues. So I'm just curious how and if the state has said, okay, if we do this, this is what it's going to cost us, this is where we're going to have to do it, this is how we're going to implement it, this is what's going to happen to those leaseholds. Just all the components of implementing a statewide process like this.
Representative Davis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe I can help out a little bit with this. With your questions there, what they alluded to us is if I have a state lease and you're the adjoining landowner, we would share that 50/50 cost of building that fence along that state, okay? Because you're a landowner, I'm a leasee. So that's how this would shake out. Now, across the state of Wyoming, there's only 1 to 2% of state leases that aren't currently leased. So what you were talking about would be an issue if I was a private property owner on the outside of a state lease that wasn't currently being held by somebody else, except the state of Wyoming. So at that point, then the state of Wyoming would have to be on the hook for 50% of that fence line between me as a private landowner and them as the leasee of their own state land. Otherwise, it's up to whoever leases the state ground, and the adjoining private landowner would thus share 50/50 on that fence line. That was the way it was presented to us, so that's what I understand of the bill. Hopefully that cleared up some of that.
Speaker Nyman.
And thank you, Madam Chairman. And to further clarify that, these only would be required on any contested piece of property. If the state's lands are leased by the adjacent landowner, or those would be no reason, no need to fence that. The only time this would be required is if there's some kind of a contested property line, not even contested, it's just that simply that whoever the adjacent landowner does not lease those grounds. And so there's no impetus to try to lease all of these, or to fence these properties that are uncontested. So, and another thing on the isolated sections, that is a situation where if it's completely surrounded by another landowner and there's no access to that, there would be no reason other than the state would have a real impetus to try to work out a lease with that adjacent landowner that is already surrounded with no real provision to provide public access to that property or to get livestock in there. I know of a lot of little 80-acre chunks that are isolated, even some school sections and even larger blocks of land, that they will work diligently to try to work with the adjacent landowners to lease that. And quite honestly, as you read the bill, if you go on line 13 on section 1, just rereading it, it says landowners whose property adjoins state lands on which the landowner does not hold a lease may, this would be the adjacent landowner, construct a lawful partition fence along state lands and the Office of State Lands and Investments, or this is either, if that fence is constructed, it's either going to be this Office of State Lands, or if the state lands are currently leased to someone else, the leasee of the state land shall pay for 1/2 of the actual cost along with the property owner across the fence from the state lands. And the construction of a lawful partition fence, lawful meaning that it has to meet the state requirements of minimums and maximums. So like I said, again, it's not putting the state in a position where they're going to be tasked with having to recompensate somebody for half the cost of a sucker rod fence and steel and braced and all that stuff. The state law fencing requirements or the statutes are very clear on what constitutes a lawful fence. 3 wires, I believe, a rod apart, corners, all that's very, very established and is able to be maintained or understood. The half of the cost of the actual construction of the lawful partition fence, landowners and the Office of State Lands, and this I think is an important part of this piece of legislation, and investments, or the leasee, depending on whether or not that piece of land in question is being leased, at all times that the state lands are leased, shall contribute to the cost of maintenance of the lawful partition fence in the portion of their prospective interest in the fence. So it would be in this situation, 50/50. So they're going to have to share the cost to create it if it's being leased by someone other than the adjacent landowner, and if it's contested, and also they will have to share the cost to maintain it, which is exactly what we have to do as private landowners right now. It's simply making the state act like a private landowner, property owner. So on and for the bill.
Representative Strzok.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And just to go off of what's been talked about, it is not to take us, if you've got state lease is in with already you have. This is not to help you with your management. It's not to take those acres, and they're not going to come in, the state's not going to have to come in and help you build a fence to help with management. This is not what it's about. So it's not, we're not creating this crazy thing where they're going to be building fences throughout the state. And I just wanted to reiterate that. So thank you.
Are you ready for the question? Okay, question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Winter's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Senate File 63 do pass. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 63, Senate File 63 is passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 120. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 120, sponsored by Senator Salazar, Wyoming Prime Act, an act relating to marketing homemade foods. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 120, Wyoming Prime Act, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Davis, Eklund, Johnson, Ottman, Schmid, Strzok, Winter. Noes, Representative Provenza. Representative Winter, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Winter?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, you do so with the recommendation that Bill number 120 do pass. There are no amendments. And the good representative from the Wind River country will explain the bill.
Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I bring to you today Senate File 120, and I ask for your favorable consideration. This bill is called the Prime Act. The Wyoming Prime Act is a bill that would allow small-scale farmers and ranchers to sell homemade meat products. The bill would expand an exemption to the Federal Meat Inspection Act to allow meat from custom slaughterhouses to be sold to consumers and retailers. What the Prime Act would do, it will allow small farmers and ranchers to slaughter and process their livestock at local custom slaughterhouses. It will remove the federal ban on selling meat from custom slaughterhouses and allow states to pass their own laws to regulate the sale of custom slaughtered meat. Benefits of this Prime Act will relieve meat shortages. It helps small farmers and ranches, allows consumers to buy local meat, promotes animal welfare, and maintains a safe food supply. I believe it would reduce food prices in many areas and keeps local dollars in local communities. A prominent written warning statement shall be delivered to the customer at the point of sale, or it will be labeled on the product's packaging. This will inform the customer that the product has not been inspected and is not regulated. It also will describe the standards used by the producer in the raising and processing of the animal. Americans want to buy fresh meat from local farmers. Americans want to pay less for food. Americans want to keep their dollars local, and we here in Wyoming know, being the primary beef producers, and we see a lot of this locally anyway, so that this would be a good thing. What this will do, the Prime Act will help thousands of farmers support their families and bring fresh and local food to countless consumers at a reasonable price. This is common sense. Okay, I have a few more. Just a second. Everybody's jumping in line. In support, I'm sure. Okay. The meat products are produced, this is on page 3 of the bill. The meat products are produced from animals that are raised, slaughtered, processed, and sold in Wyoming. The meat products are sold directly to an informed end consumer. in Wyoming, whether for consumption on or off the premises of the producer. A prominent written warning statement, as I said a minute ago, is delivered to the informed end consumer at the time of sale, or the warning is displayed on a label affixed to the meat product packaging. The warning required by this paragraph shall state, the meat product has not been inspected and is not regulated. An informed end consumer who obtains meat products under this act agrees not to sell, donate, or commercially redistribute the meat. Information describing the standards used by the producer with respect to the animal health and in the processing of meat from the animal, and the producer shall not publish any statement associated with the meat that implies or states the Wyoming Department of Agriculture's approval or endorsement of meat delivered under this subsection. This bill is a trigger bill. It is to be put in place for when the federal action comes. And some people say, well, why not wait? Well, the reason we don't want to wait is that if it happens and we're not in session, and we have an emergency like we have in the last few years, this way we'll be ready for it. And also, if any of you have these things going on in your communities, you know what a blessing they are, both for quality and for availability. I'd ask for your considerable or your favorable consideration, and please vote aye on the bill.
Representative Banks.
Madam Chairman, thank you. On in favor of this bill. I think one of the best bills for food freedom we can get out of this body. So an important distinction to know is, there's different slaughter facilities around the state of Wyoming. So right now we have, I think it was 6 state inspected slaughter facilities. When it comes to a custom slaughter facility, that you can probably have one in every one of your communities. You can think of a custom slaughter facility. What this does is allow these custom slaughter facilities to have a direct to consumer sale. So, you know, allowing lowering the cost of meat, allowing farmers and ranchers to sell locally through these custom slaughter facilities is an important distinction to know. Knowing that we can sell locally, that we don't have to have another panic like we had a few years ago during the COVID days where everybody was waiting outside the state slaughter facilities with no end in sight. We can allow the custom slaughter facilities in your community to have to allow our producers a direct-to-consumer sale. And so this is a great bill for food freedom and something that our producers, our communities, our consumers, our processing facilities, everybody can benefit from. So on and for, and urge your aye vote.
Representative Lane.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. On and for the bill, my question comes for clarity within labeling. We were talking about labeling country of origin earlier. In the labeling within the bill, would that exempt them from then having to add that label because they already have a disclaimer on their package? That's my question. Thank you.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to clear up a little bit more information here. The trigger bill at the federal level is 627. And if that's triggered, then this bill would then become active. And there are currently 36 plants in the state of Wyoming, 14 which are federally inspected. This bill wouldn't affect those federally inspected. 7 are state inspected. This bill would help with that state inspection. And then the remaining balance are custom plants here. That's where we'll really shine here, is that'll allow them to sell directly to the consumer. It's a bill that we've seen here before. This is kind of the second go of it. The body rejected it last time. I think this time, we should not reject that and go with this and have this in our quiver. So when the feds do act, we can be, that's right, Little John, be ready for action here. Thank you.
Representative Chestick.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Actually, I think the bill did pass a year ago and was vetoed by our chief executive. So my question is what happens if the federal act is amended in some way that makes it very different from what our bill would do? Does our bill go into effect even though the federal law has been significantly amended?
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So this bill requires, it's waiting for an act at the federal level. I wanted to support the bill. Unfortunately, what we learned in committee is that there is not a vehicle. There is no federal bill right now. So we're putting, the concern is you're putting a trigger bill in with no horse to ride off into the sunset with and be slaughtered and eaten, I guess. Maybe I should have used a cow metaphor. But there's nothing, there's no vehicle. And this was vetoed specifically for that reason before. There wasn't, the chief executive didn't like it. Why are we putting in our green book something that we're beholden to the federal government to do? That's up to you to decide if you want to support that or not. I think we confuse the people of our state and our producers and the people that would be looking at this when we say, oh, this is legal, but if you dig in just a little bit, you find out that it's not. Because there is no congressional law.
Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple comments on a few of the questions. Number one, when the governor vetoed, he said he wasn't a fan of trigger bills. And really, that would leave us in a lurch. It could be, if we aren't in session, it could be 10 months. And also, we know that producers, there's a lot of things that go on schedule throughout the year. So having it in or having it not in really regulates the availability of that. So the other thing is that if the Federal Prime Act passes passing this bill ensures Wyoming will immediately be able to take advantage of the opportunity. And as far as not matching or not having a vehicle or what it would do with that, it only is in effect if they match exactly. It's not conducive because we're not going to amend their law and they're not going to amend ours. So if they match, then it would go in. The other thing is that the bill's being filed, it's been filed every year for the last 6 years. So it's looking better than it has. So I would just say, as being a major producer in our areas, we have enough things trying to get the animals to slaughter with the low amount of them. And local control, I'll tell you what, when I went to the grocery store and the only meat I could find was for $24 and $30, I was looking local. And it is a wonderful thing to be able to go in and see nice red meat, not orange meat, and to know that it's been produced within the last, recently, rather than who knows how long. So I would just, again, look at the possibilities of this. We've already marched in on some other food freedom opportunities, and let's take care of our people. We could be in another precarious position, who knows when. And with being kind of locked up here with the highways, it would be very good. So anyways, please vote aye.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The good presenter from over the snowy hill to the west of us is correct. The law the Trigger Congressional Act was in the previous Congress. So there is not one in the current Congress at this time, a bill out there. So I stand corrected. Thank you.
Ready? Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Winter's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it does so with a recommendation that Senate File 120 do pass. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate File 120 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 33. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 33, sponsored by Transportation, Non-Citizen Driver's License and ID Card Revisions, an act relating to motor vehicles. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 33 engrossed, Non-Citizen Driver's Licenses and ID Card Revisions, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Brown, Geringer, McCann, Tarver. Noes, Representatives Larson, Nicholas, Posey, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 33 do pass. I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee amendment, and I will explain the bill. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a fairly straightforward bill. This is as you will see, this is a committee bill as well. This bill is in an effort to make sure that our ID cards, if they are granted to a non-U.S. citizen, that these ID cards clearly and are very articulate in what they say. So right now, if you are provided an ID card and you are a non-citizen, you will actually get an NR, and it kind of goes in the same area on your license that you have the class codes and everything like that. It's non-blatant, we'll say. It's nondescript, and so it's a very small notation on this. What we heard from our chief executive over our elections is that he would like to see this be more prominently displayed, and so that's where this bill came from. What you will see for the amendment is the term U.S., and we added the term citizen at the end of this. And this is kind of a combination of what's going on between us and the older body down at the other end of the hall down there. You see a few of those older members hanging out in the back of our lobby, but and they're not paying attention, so that's probably a good thing. But they can't hear. If they turn their bell tones up, they might be able to hear us. But what this is, ladies and gentlemen, is from the other body. It came to us and it says not a U.S., and so that would be prominently displayed on the ID card. It would say not a U.S. The committee's discussion was basically not a U.S. what? And so they added citizen to this to ensure that as we put this particular bill forward, that when they stamp these, maybe a couple hundred of these every year, that this is prominently displayed, that it says not a U.S. citizen. So I'm not seeing any rush to the microphones at this point. I would call for question on the amendment.
Question having been called, all those in favor?
Ooh, Madam Chairman.
Representative Yen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, so I was looking at what they did on the other side, but it seems like when they put in this not a U.S. language, they literally took out the word citizens. Did anyone that presented the bill testify on what happened during that amendment?
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Yes, so good question. And the biggest issue that we saw with this was the department stated that putting this on the license with this much text on one line may present an issue on the driver's license on one line. I will give full transparency to this body as well. In order to do this, it's going to have to go through a complete redesign for the Department of Transportation to be able to actually put this into effect, and it's going to cost us a couple $100,000 to do this. I'm hearing maybe not. So what I was told originally is that this was going to cost a couple $100,000 to do this. In the process, I'm being shaken even with my my vice chair in the back that that's not the case. But The citizen there was too many lines or too many characters on there for that to not be able to be held, and that's why they struck citizen.
Representative Geringer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to clarify, what we heard in committee was the change with just the text was in the neighborhood of about 65, 67,000, somewhere in there, to do a change in the color of the license to make it pink, orange, whatever it might be, would be on the order of 260,000.
Question having been called. All those in favor of the standing committee amendment number 1, say aye. Those opposed, no. The standing committee amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Brown's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill 33 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate File 33 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 88. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 88, sponsored by Natural Resource Funding. 2025 Large Project Funding, an act relating to Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resources Funding Act. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 88 engrossed. 2025 Large Project Funding. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes. Representatives Byron, Campbell, Connolly, Harshman, Jarvis, Provenza, Storer, Thayer, Wharf. Representative Byron, Chairman. This bill was re-referred to Committee number 2, Appropriations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 88 engrossed, 2025 Large Project Funding, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes. Representatives Alaman, Angelos, Bear, Haroldson, Pendergraft, Sherwood, Smith. Representative Bear, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Byron?
I move that when the committee of the whole rise to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 88 do pass, and with the explanation of Senate File 88, I will start with the good representative from over the mountain that is currently probably pretty snowy.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Friends, I bring to you Senate File 88, the 2025 Large Project Funding Bill. For those of you who are new to the body, I just kind of want to walk you through what these bills look like, who these folks are. Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust was created in 2011, and it was fully funded 2 years ago. So when we fully funded this trust, we made this program self-sufficient, meaning that the funds that we are quote-unquote appropriating are funds that they have raised with their own trust. All we are doing is allowing them to spend the money on larger projects that they have raised themselves through the trust for bills that are over, or for amendments that are over 400,000. So this bill approves these projects that have already gone through a substantive vetting process through the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust. And for each project, as you go through the bill, you will see total project budget amounts and then the amount appropriated from the trust that needs our approval. So you'll see that across the board, the trust has a high leverage amount. So on average, the leverage amount is $5.50 per dollar that we spend. So for each dollar that the trust spends on projects in your communities and your districts, we get $5.50 in return and matched on those projects. Overall, you'll see some of the leverage differences, and I think from my other good representative with initials KP sent out a handout on your desks for the large projects, and you'll see that there's different leverage amounts based on project. But the main thing is that through these projects, which have been going on for many years in your communities, the funding that they use goes into your community. For example, in my county, I have an excavator who is able to continue to employ folks because they're able to work on river restoration projects. So this bill just allows us to approve the funding projects through statute that we are required to. And there are several across the state that impact your districts. So we've got projects that are in Carbon County, Weston County, Sheridan County, Lincoln County, Fremont County, Cook County, Johnson County, and Sublette and Uintah. So across the state, this is benefiting us. I can walk you through the bill if you have specific questions about projects. I also can answer any questions that you have. But overall, what this project does is ensures that we are taking care of the people of Wyoming and Wyoming's Western heritage and our wildlife. So with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Are you ready for the question? Oh, here we go. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. So just to give, this is something that we're going to see pretty much every year come before us in the body. And I think it's something that you need to understand as we look at this. So prior legislative bodies before us put money into the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust. That money is there as a corpus that we pull interest off of to do things like this. It could be rangeland management, it could be deer crossings, it could be wildlife projects around the state. So it's money that's set aside with the specific purpose of addressing management of our natural resources in the realm of our wildlife. And so if you go through, you can see the different, and you can see the leverage numbers. That's the amount of money that you heard the good representative talk about. And so you might sit there and go, well, this is a lot of money and we don't want to spend this money. Okay, well, let's back up and understand, as long as the trust is in place, this is what the trust function is. So really it's a situation, because my first year I went in and looked at these numbers and went, oh my goodness, that's too much money. Why are we doing that? It was actually a down year. We were in the process of cutting money. And I'm like, why would we do this? Well, because it's in this trust, and this trust, the purpose of this trust is to continue to fund these functions in our state. And so a couple things that I do want to talk about, or something I want to point out, is these are all projects that directly address wildlife habitat, right? Or prevention of hit on roadway. Okay. Sometimes in the past, we've had projects that put land into, lock land up into trust land. And so you will not find that in any of these projects. And that's a conversation down the road we can have, because that's a policy decision. But all of these are updates to the land, the resource, and or infrastructure to keep our four-legged ungulates off of our highways and byways. And so on and forward, but I just wanted a little bit of information especially for our new members that are coming in going, well, why are we funding this, and why wasn't this in the budget, and what does this look like? This is something you'll see every single year, and it's a good conversation. If you have questions, there are people who could answer them for you, any of the good bringers or myself or even the agency. If you have questions on it and why we're doing it, they're good questions to ask, and I challenge you to ask them, get educated on it. There might be some in your area. You can even do a ride along and see what these projects are, get involved in these and ask the questions. We have the ability in this body to help steer where this goes, and that's a good thing. But understanding that this is part of the process is using those funds that come off of our trust for these projects, and these are the larger projects that they do. So on and forth.
Representative Lean.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My question is, are any of these projects part of the burn areas that were addressed in prior funding?
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would like to point out to the body that none of this money in this trust is taxpayer dollars. These are extraction dollars. Those are the fossil fuels that have left our state, and we have chose to put them aside in order to put them to work for the state of Wyoming. Just thank you.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The question was asked about whether any of these are funded for the other burn areas. The answer is no. To best of my knowledge, I believe we talked about that in committee. They don't overlap with each other. The process for the large projects that you see in here, applications are received in March and September of each year, and then they go through the vetting process. So some of that, our fires happened afterwards, so there isn't overlap between these two. We are spending our dollars in a very responsible way.
Representative Byron?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd also like to remind the body that each one of the projects that the good chairman of, vice chair of committee number 2 dropped on your desk, each one of these projects is vetted heavily. So it's a volunteer board from all of your communities, all of our state, that goes through and looks at every one of these large projects. Additionally, all the small projects that these folks are doing are also vetted. So I think to the good representative from where they grow wheat mentioned, please join them for a ride-along. Please join them to go vet the projects in your neighborhood, because you'll really understand where these dollars are getting spent. And a lot of them are on our public lands. A lot of them are habitat that maybe it's on private land, but ultimately that deer knows boundaries. So that fish might be a fish passage project they're working on, a stream restoration project in the county over the mountain. But ultimately, those animals don't know those boundaries, and they're traveling to your country. So to fully answer the question from the central part of the state, we can get that answer for you. I think that this trust also is used for a place we can park some funds to do some mitigation efforts, specifically related to a major issue we are facing as a state right now, which is cheatgrass. You'll see a lot of cheatgrass projects in here, and kind of dovetailing off the fire question, the more cheatgrass we can stop or prevent or get rid of, the much more chance we have to fight these big fires.
Representative Larson?
Thank you. And to the good presenter of the bill, just to clarify a couple of things. So statutorily, we have this trust fund built, and the revenue generated off of investment is required to be used for conservation issues or projects, of which these large projects are part of. So if you'd confirm that for me. And then the second thing is, if there's a couple of these cheatgrass projects in here, and if you look at the summary, it says this project was funded by special appropriation from the Wyoming legislature. And so to the good representative from down there where dams are savory, when he said that we don't use any general funds, last year we appropriated $11 million for cheatgrass mitigation, of which these that say this project was funded by special appropriation from the Wyoming legislature is probably a component of. Is that safe to say? Because, Madam Chairman, because we made that appropriation to the WWNRT to administer.
Representative Byron?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. That appropriation uniquely was separate this go-around. And I think I could rely on the good representative that's standing up in the back corner to maybe touch on that. But that was a separate appropriation specific towards this major issue we have with cheatgrass. So the funds derived from the actual trust go towards a number of projects that are in addition to the large project fundings you're seeing. So the income derived off of that is separate from, and there could be some overlap so they can get more leverage out of the projects, certainly. But I think that the large project funding we're looking at could touch on some of that. But generally, you can see a lot of the 9 that are discussed, like 924-006, Natrona Core cheatgrass, which is in the bill, so I can say it. Say it anyway, but we're talking about 70,000 acres that we're trying to treat. And another thing that was mentioned is they're trying to not only leverage the funds, but leverage efficiencies. And I don't want to go off too much on a tangent, but when we mobilize a air attack on this cheatgrass, if we bring in them for 2 weeks and they go to a different state for 2 weeks and bring them back, we're paying a lot of extra cost to bring them out. We can keep these folks busy in our state. Cheatgrass is so bad right now. We can keep them busy from when the grass just dry out to when the snow flies again. So I think it's really amazing what they are doing as a staff of 2 in the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund, and the amount of work they're getting through our local conservation district, our landowners, our federal partners, and all the leverage they're getting to be able to put this money on the ground and getting these projects done.
Representative Provenza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to answer the good question from the representative with the three-legged cats, the statute does require that that funding be used for conservation purposes. There's one portion of that that says that it can be used for staff, but there, as was mentioned by the good chairman, there are only 2 staff members in this agency, 9 board members that are not paid, that do much of the work. And so overwhelmingly funds go to things like that are listed in our statutes, and that's 9-15-103, improvements and maintenance of existing habitat necessary for optimum wildlife, conservation, maintenance, protection, development of wildlife resources. There's a list of things there, Body. If you'd like to come borrow my green book, I'm happy to let you look through that. But there is a designated purpose for those funds, all of which these projects meet very well.
Representative Heiner?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So going along with this cheatgrass narrative we've been hearing, you look at the projects in this handout we got, there's a number of projects. We're going to spend north of $6 million on cheatgrass and work on hundreds of thousands of acres. My question to the bringers, how is this being coordinated with private landowners and with the public landowners? Are we footing the entire bill as a state, or is the public land organization helping us with the cost of this cheatgrass? Are private individuals helping, or is this totally funded by the state?
Representative Provenza?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm trying to find my project book, but essentially, if you look at the cheatgrass portion of this bill, the leverage is a smaller amount than general. It looks like it's 1.02. So for each dollar we spend from the trust corpus, we got $1 in private funds. The thing about that, though, is that cheatgrass isn't a sexy project. It's not something that a bunch of, so we have one company that likes to fund projects that deals with unlimited amounts of trout, right? They aren't necessarily as invested in putting funds into cheatgrass as they are in river dam restoration projects, right? So we are getting private funds for cheatgrass, though, and I have the list of people specifically that are helping with that, but I won't get into too many details on the mic. But folks are putting their money where their mouth is. We've got people across the state that are putting money in. This isn't a check that goes out to a landowner. This is a process that is vetted through the board, that goes through, often works with folks that are with our agency that oversees our fish and our game, works with our people that deal with pests and weeds on the ground. So this isn't a check that goes to anybody. There's no handout. This is a project that goes through multiple levels of people that are invested in outcomes that benefit the state of Wyoming.
Representative Larson?
Thank you. And to the good majority floor leader, on the cheatgrass, the good presenter noted that there was one that was about 1.02. That was in the county that's number 1 in your heart, and less so with their funds. And but if you look at the one western part of the state, that's leveraged almost 2.25 to 1, and then the one up in around where the winning football team is about 3.2 to 1. Historically, on these large projects, we've been able to get through other federal and state agencies a match of around, on an average, about 4 to 1. And that's why we turn the cheatgrass money over to them, because they could leverage it much better than the other agencies have been able to. Thank you.
Representative Byron?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. To the good majority floor leader's question, I think that if you look at projects 9-24-024, you're talking about Johnson, Campbell, and Crook counties in cooperation with multiple weed and pest districts. But the cost of this project, folks, is nearly $25 million, of which the request was $6 million, of which the grant was less. So and the leverage on that one is 3.12. So for every dollar, we get 3.12 of leverage. So I think it's important to note that, yeah, we are a small bite of the apple of that almost $25 million, but the rest of that is being covered by multiple other funding sources. It is not just we are not carrying the entire water for the state. We are carrying a small portion of it, as we maybe should, certainly partnering with the weed and pest districts across those counties that were mentioned. But ultimately, we're looking at a little less than 10% about 20% of that total project. That's with our leveraged dollars. So we're really making the dollar go a long way in these projects, and it's just a super great benefit specifically to our counties. And once again, the joke was brought, who's planting this cheatgrass? This is an invasive species, folks. This is something that if you go to some of our neighboring states and to some of our own constituents, are devastating their rangelands. So I continue to be impressed by how we fight back against it. It is large-scale operations that involve a lot of funds to fight, but the more we can fight, the more we can win against that cheatgrass.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So one of the things I think we need to also understand, and you've heard me at the mic before on cheatgrass, for a long time, cheatgrass, we didn't have an option. We had ideas, we tried some stuff, but we failed. But in the last few years, they've come up with a new product that has proven time and time again to do a great job on cheatgrass. We've got cheatgrass actually on the run when it comes to our application and treatment. And so what you're gonna find, you're gonna see more and more cheatgrass stuff come up, because this is it. The nutritional value of cheatgrass is only about 2 weeks. I mean, you got 2 weeks on a wet year, maybe 3-4 weeks of cheatgrass actually being something that's gonna prove nutritional value. Past that, they don't touch it, they won't touch it. And when I say they, I'm talking about mule deer, elk, and antelope, and cattle. And so cheatgrass really has proven that it's choking out our natives, it's choking out our those grasses that we need in these areas to give our forage that is going to be vital. So that's something to keep in mind. So as we brought that budget amendment that brought money in for taking care of cheatgrass in burn areas, as we've heard today, why is this so vitally important? Because we actually have a product now that is killing cheatgrass and doing it at a very accelerated rate. And so just kind of a little bit of background on the cheatgrass fight.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The other thing I'll add, I'm looking at the rest of the projects that were considered in the selection this year, and I think I'm at like 8 different cheatgrass and invasives projects that aren't in this large project bill. So there's also there's more being done that are being leveraged so well that we don't need to consider the threshold for what the appropriation is. I put appropriations in quotes because, again, this is from the trust. This is from them. We're not taking money from our general fund. So please vote aye on the bill. Woohoo!
Question being called. Oh, no. Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Byron's motion that the Committee of the Whole rises to report and does so with the recommendation that Senate File 88 do pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Senate File 84 is passed the Committee of the Whole. Representative Angelos.
Madam Chairman, can I have privilege of the floor?
Please proceed.
All right. Members of the body, if you would look up here to the South Gallery, we have members of Gillette Area Leadership Institute, or what we call GALI. They are from Campbell County, and they're here to join us for the next 2 days. And they just had a riveting experience watching debate. So welcome to the House.
Michael is right here. I got right here. Right?
Good. Yep, that's after you say majority leader. Once you have told me you're done, you raise your hand. Okay, so look over and say, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Is that all I do?
Yep, Mr. Simmons, and he says, I move the committee the whole report. You have heard the motion, so what you say, all those in favor, then you go stand next to your thing, and then I say this. But then actually, you say this.
Oh, okay, I say that. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
Okay, and then I say, you have heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. The motion carries. And then I get up.
Okay, then you go down and stand at that microphone, whichever one's comfortable to you. And, Reading clerk, please.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 168, do pass. Senate File 64, do pass amended. Senate File 84, do pass amended. Senate File 32, do pass amended. Senate File 63, do pass. Senate File 120, do pass. Senate File 33, do pass amended. Senate File 88, do pass. Representative Weber, Chairman.
I move the adoption for the Committee of the Whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion has been adopted. Congratulations, Representative Weber. Good job. Reports from standing committees.
Senate File 4, sponsored by Travel, State Park Peace Officers, definition and scope of authority, an act relating to criminal procedure. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 4, engrossed, State Park Peace Officers, definition, scope of authority, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation of due pass. Ayes. Representatives Byron, Campbell, Connolly, Jarvis, Provenza, Storer, Thayer, Wharf. Excused, Representative Harshman. Representative Byron, Chairman. Senate File 61, sponsored by Senator Case. Pollution Control, Property Tax Exemption, Applicability. An act relating to environmental quality. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 61, engrossed. Pollution Control, Property Tax Exemption, Applicability. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that due pass. Ayes. Representatives Campbell, Lean, Locke, Storer, Stivar. Noes, Representatives Brown, Lucas, Wharf. Excused, Representative Riggins. Representative Locke, Chairman. Senate File 106, sponsored by Senator Barlow. Motor Vehicle Dealer and Manufacturer Warranty Rates, an act relating to motor vehicles. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 106, Motor Vehicle Dealer and Manufacturer Warranty Rates. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that due pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Brown, Geringer, Larson, McCann, Nicholas, Posey, Tarver, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman. Senate File 110, sponsored by Senator Brennan. Inclusion of Crossing Guards for Governmental Claims Act. An act modifying the Wyoming Governmental Claims Act to include crossing guard volunteers and faculty. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 110, Inclusion of Crossing Guards for Governmental Claims Act. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that due pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Brown, Geringer, Larson, McCann, Nicholas, Posey, Tarver, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman. Senate File 119, sponsored by Senator Boner. Expedited professional licensure for military members, an act relating to professions and occupations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred Senate File 119 engrossed, expedited professional licensure for military members. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation due pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Brown, Geringer, Larson, McCann, Nicholas, Posey, Tarver, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman. Senate File 121, sponsored by Senator Boner. Rodeo License Plate, an act relating to motor vehicle license plates. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 121, Rodeo License Plate, Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Davis, Eklund, Johnson, Ottman, Provenza, Schmid, Strzok, Winter. Representative Winter, Chairman. Senate File 153, sponsored by Senator Barlow. Residential real property taxable value, an act relating to taxation and revenue. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 3 Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 153 engrossed, residential real property taxable value, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Brown, Campbell, Lean, Locke, Lucas, Storer, Stivar, Wharf. Excused, Representative Riggins. Representative Locke, Chairman. Senate File 179, sponsored by Senator Barlow. Sage grouse compensatory mitigation amendments. An act relating to sage grouse implementation and mitigation credits. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 179, sage grouse compensatory mitigation amendments. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass. Ayes. Representatives Byron, Campbell, Connolly, Jarvis, Provenza, Storer, Thayer, Wharf. Excused, Representative Harshman. Representative Byron, Chairman.
Messages from the Senate.
Message number 288. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 14, Solid Waste Municipal Cease and Transfer Funding. Ayes 31. Message 287. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 4, Snowmobile Registration and User Fees. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 19, noes 12. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 289. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 22, Water and Wastewater Operator Emergency Response. Ayes 31. Message 290. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 30, Driver's Licenses and ID Revisions. Ayes 31. Message 291. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 41, Environmental Quality Irrevocable Letters of Credit. Ayes 31. Message 292. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 45, Removing Otters as Protected Animals. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 22, noes 9. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 293. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 61, State Land Leases Preference Amendments. Ayes 30, conflict 1. Message 294. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 69, Foreign Adversary Ownership of Control of Business Entities. Ayes 31. Message 295. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 73, Recreation Safety Rock Climbing. Ayes 31. Message 296. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 82, Provider Enrollment Standards. Ayes 30, noes 1. Message 297. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 92, Wyoming Livestock Board Memorandums of Understanding. Ayes 31. Message 298. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 11, Manufacturing Sales and Use Tax Exemption Amendments. The House bill listed above passed the third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 27, noes 4. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message number 299. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 28, Commercial Driver's Licenses Revisions. The House bill listed above passed on third reading in an amended form as follows by the vote indicated. Ayes 25, noes 6. The Senate respectfully asks the House to concur by adopting the listed amendments. Message 300. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 75, coal severance tax rate. Ayes 23, noes 8. Message 301. Mr. Speaker, the Senate did concur on House amendments to the bill listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 42, resort hotel liquor licenses. Ayes 20, noes 8, excused 1, conflict 2. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Okay, I've got some a re-referral. Chairman Locke. Committee number 3.
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that one actually has to be referred. There's not appropriation in there, so I think that might have been a mistake on my part. So,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. No other re-referrals. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move on to, I don't think we've got anything else. We are at a new order of business for me as your speaker and for many of you, and for those that you've been here before, we are at concurrence requests. And so I'm going to try to navigate through this, and hopefully we can do this without too many humps and bumps here. So first one is going to be on House Bill number okay. They're on the calendar page at the very bottom. It says concurrences. After general file, at the very bottom, it says concurrences, and you can find these concurrences. So if you guys want to make your way to that position, then we can get ready to start that. We are at that order of business of request to concur with the Senate amendments to House bills. First message for our consideration is message number 1. Let's see. No, actually, message number 287 to House Bill number 4. Representative Byron. Chairman Byron, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and bear with me as it's also my first time. So, folks, I move message 287 and ask for an aye vote as it relates to House Bill 4. And if you are pulling that up or you want some details, what that does is changes, and I ask for an aye vote to concur with the Senate. It deletes 70 and inserts 75. So what we did is we had a little tweak of the antique snowmobile definition and age, and we agreed to let that go. In exchange is what we did is we got an extra $5 for those non-residents from 70 to 75. So I asked for an aye vote.
Okay, we are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill number 4. A majority of the collected members is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Allemand? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Brady? Bratton? Brown, Gary? Brown, Landon? Byron? Campbell, Elisa? Campbell, Kevin? Chestick? Clouston? Connolly? Connolly? Davis? Eklund? Erickson? Filer? Geringer? Guggenmoss? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Heft? Jarvis? Johnson? Kelly? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Lean? Locke? Lucas? Lucas? McCann? Nicholas? Ottman? Pendergraft? Posey? Provenza? Riggins, excused. Rodriguez Williams? Schmid? Sherwood? Singh? Smith? Storer? Strzok? Stivar? Tarver? Thayer? Washut? Wasserberger? Repeat? Webb? Weber? Wharf? Williams? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Mr. Speaker? Are there any changes? Allemand? Aye.
to no. Further changes. Pendergraft? Johnson? Aye. To no. Bratton? Aye. To no. McCann? No. To aye. Oh, sorry. McCann? No. Schmid? No. To aye. Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 38 aye, 22 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill number 4. Next message for our consideration is message number 298 on House Bill number 11, Representative Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that we concur with message number 298, which is Senate's amendments to House Bill 11. And let me walk you through this just a little bit. In this House, the original bill, kind of to oversimplify the conversation, the original bill had, let me kind of get back to that original bill. Basically what it did is, this is sales and use tax exemption amendments, and what it did is it had a particular sales and use tax exemption for some of our mining functions, and it extended the exemption from 2027 to 2037. That was the original bill. In this House, we voted to remove that end date completely from, so we removed the 2037 to where we put that exemption out. Basically, what we said is we took out until December 31st or 2037. We put in there the sale or lease of machinery to be used in this state directly and predominantly in manufacturing tangible personal property. So we completely removed the end date of this exemption in both cases. What the Senate amendment does is it basically takes it back until, so the amendment now is until this exemption is in place until December 31st, 2037 is what they've done. They've kind of replaced what the original bill had. And let me talk a little bit about that. A lot of discussion that went on in the Revenue Committee around this. The current industries that are receiving this exemption, they understood and they were okay with that 2037 end date. And but what happened, I know on the floor with, I think, a committee of the whole amendment, we completely removed the end date and made it ongoing. And so I just asked this body for an aye vote on concurrence with this change that the Senate has sent over.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Larson, JT.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and opposed to concurrence on this specific message. The body was very clear. We had, I think it was 36 aye votes on that committee of the whole amendment to make this a permanent exemption. The rest of the exemptions under that part of the statute they don't have any sunsets on them. This is the only one that has a sunset on it. And I think that we should just get rid of the sunset. If down the road in the next couple of years, we decide that it's not working for the state or our revenues, we can come back and always change it. But this is putting our money where our mouth is and saying we want to support our manufacturing industry, we want to support our extractive industry, and this really benefits the core industry in my part of the state. So I encourage a no vote, so that way we can go to conference committee and kind of figure out maybe a middle ground even in conference committee and address it there. So, or at least figure out what the Senate was thinking more along those lines too, and just have a conversation with them. you don't have to necessarily think that we should have to concur on this to vote no. If you just want to support the discussion between a committee with the House and the Senate, you can always vote no as well. So I encourage a no vote so we can have that discussion and see if there's a middle ground we can meet with the Senate. Thanks.
Representative Stivar.
On and for the concurrence. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to make sure this stays on the radar. In 10 years, the next legislative body, some of us will be here, some of us will be gone, but it's on their radar to look at. So on and for the concurrence.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Brown, Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had to check my watch to make sure the date was right. I was thinking this was Groundhog's Day. It's deja vu all over again. I think I said it over there last time, but I agree with the good representative from the southwestern part of the state, ladies and gentlemen. This body voted. We made it a very clear statement to the other body. If somebody wants to have this discussion and actually tax manufacturing, let's bring that bill. But to have this discussion every 10 years, it's kind of a waste of our time. So on and against concurrence, let's go meet in a room and knock some heads and come back and let's let the House win.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. Any others? Discussion on the concurrence? Seeing none. Chairman, please.
Again, I just asked for your concurrence, and I vote on the concurrence. Thank you.
Body, we are voting on the motion to concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill number 11. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Allemand. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Brady. Bratton. Brown, Gary. Brown, Landon. Byron. Campbell, Elisa. Campbell, Kevin. Chestick. Clouston. Connolly. Davis. Eklund. Erickson. Filer. Geringer. Guggenmoss. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Heft. Jarvis. Johnson. Kelly. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Lean. Locke. Lucas. Excused. McCann. McCann. Nicholas. Ottman. Pendergraft. Posey. Provenza. Riggins, excused. Rodriguez Williams. Schmid. Sherwood. Singh. Smith. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Thayer. Washut. Wasserberger. Webb. Weber. Wharf. Williams. Repeat. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Mr. Speaker. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 11 aye, 49 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have chosen not to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 11. We will have to, let's see, I've got a designated committee on the fly here. So chairman will be Locke. Members will be Davis and Stivar. So I hope you guys heard that. You're going to be the ones that are going to go down and fight for the House position. If you come back without a bone sticking out of the skin, we're going to figure that you didn't do your job. So, all right, here we go. All right, next one for our consideration. Okay. Next message for our consideration is message number 282, on House Bill 23. Representative Brown, Landon, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message number 282 to House Bill 23, and I would ask for favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a pretty simple set of amendments. There was one committee of the whole and one standing committee amendment that came out, just cleaning up a little bit of language, nothing too serious here. I think the biggest one here is we changed the possessive of the word officers to not be a possessive. So pretty good cleanup bill, pretty good catch by our colleagues down the hall. We should probably learn to read a little better next time around, but all in favor, I would say vote aye.
Any other discussion, members? Seeing none, we are voting on the motion to concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill 23. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk, will please call the roll.
Allemand, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Brady, Bratton, Brown Gary, Brown Landon, Byron, Campbell Elisa, Campbell Kevin, Chestick, Clouston, Connolly, Davis, Eklund, Erickson, Filer, Geringer, Guggenmoss, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Heft, Jarvis, Johnson, Kelly, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Lean, Locke, Lucas, excused, McCann, Nicholas, Ottman, Pendergraft, Posey, Provenza, Riggins, excused, Rodriguez Williams, Schmid, Sherwood, Singh, Smith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Thayer, Washut, Wasserberger, Webb, Weber, Worf, Williams, Winter, Wiley, Yin. Mr. Speaker. Are there any changes? Stivar, no to aye. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have chosen to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 23. Next for our consideration, message number 292 on House Bill number 45, Representative Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message 292 to House Bill 45 and ask for your aye vote on this concurrence. All they did on that other side of the building that has been out for a few hours, I might add, is change the actual effective date. We see this a lot for the newer members of this body, and we do often go back and forth on it in committee, but they changed it from being an effective date this summer to effective immediately. So I ask for your aye vote on concurrence.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion? Okay, members, we are voting on the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill number 45. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Allemand, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Brady, Bratton, Brown Gary, Brown Landon, Byron, Campbell Elisa, Campbell Kevin, Chestick, Clouston, Connolly, Davis, Eklund, Erickson, Filer, Geringer, Guggenmoss, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Heft, Jarvis, Johnson, Kelly, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Lean, Locke, Lucas, excused, McCann, Nicholas, Ottman, Pendergraft, Posey, Provenza, Riggins, excused, Rodriguez Williams, Schmid, Sherwood, Singh, Smith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Thayer, Washut. Repeat. Wasserberger, Webb, Weber, Worf, Williams, Winter, Wiley, Yin. Mr. Speaker, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 53 aye, 7 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill 45. Next message for our consideration is message number 285 on House Bill 54. Representative Washington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message number 285 and ask for your aye vote. This regards House Bill 54, which dealt with the Chancery Court, and all the body down the hall did was change a title to include "or" in a district court, something we should have caught and didn't. They didn't change anything substantive about the law or the bill itself, so please vote aye.
Any discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing none. Body, you are voting on motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 54. A majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Allemand, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Brady, Bratton, Brown Gary, Brown Landon, Byron, Campbell Elisa, Campbell Kevin, Chestick, Clouston, Connolly, Davis, Eklund, Erickson, Filer, Geringer, Guggenmass, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Heft, Jarvis, Johnson, Kelly, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Lean, Locke, Lucas, excused, McCann, Nicholas, Ottman, Pendergraft, Posey, Provenza, Riggins, excused, Rodriguez Williams, Schmid, Sherwood, Singh, Smith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Thayer, Washut, Wasserberger, Webb, Weber, Worf, Williams, Winter, Wiley, Yin. Mr. Speaker, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have decided to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 54. Next message for our consideration is message number 299 on House Bill 28. Representative Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message 299 to House Bill 28. And body, I would ask for a no vote on this. Let's go knock some more heads and take the House side back on this one. The biggest reason, most of the amendments were good, but there is a portion in this bill, ladies and gentlemen, is the CDL or Commercial Driver's License bill that we discussed. There's a pretty important section in here that was stricken from the bill on third reading on the other end of the body, and it says that the expunged records relating to the suspension of a driver's license of a minor may be considered for purposes of disqualification from driving a commercial vehicle underneath Wyoming statute. Well, that's a pretty important distinction, and I don't think that the other body knew what they were getting rid of right there. That is actually a federal regulation that is required right now. And so basically what we would be doing is saying that the state cannot deny the usage or the issuance of a CDL if somebody did something illegal when they were younger. And the easiest one to think of is if somebody was 19 years old and blew any level of a blood alcohol content, they cannot apply for a CDL for X amount of time, basically because of the federal regulations. us having this language in there allows the department here to handle that and make the discernment on whether or not that needs to be issued or not. When they erase that from our statute, it basically requires the Department of Transportation here to issue it on the state side, and that's not always going to fall in line with the federal regulations. So just want to make sure that we get the House position back on this one, and then we'd ask for a no vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we are voting on the motion to not concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 28. A majority of the elected members is required. The chief clerk will call the roll.
I've got it back.
Yeah, point of order.
That's right. I shouldn't have
Mr.
said
Chair,
that.
or Mr. Speaker, it is a message to concur.
It's a message to concur. If you vote no, that means we do not want to concur with them. So a no vote will allow a committee I've got already laid out here to go down and fend for the House. So, all right. Please, Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Allemand, Andrew, Angelos, Banks, Bear, Brady, Bratton, Brown Gary, Brown Landon, Byron, Campbell Elisa, Campbell Kevin, Chestick, Clouston, Connolly, Davis, Eklund, Erickson, Filer, Geringer, Guggenmoss, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Heft, Jarvis, Johnson, Kelly, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson JT, Lawley, Lean, Locke, Lucas, excused, McCann, Nicholas, Ottman, Pendergraft, Posey, Provenza, Riggins, excused, Rodriguez Williams, Schmid, Sherwood, Singh, Smith, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Thayer, Washut, Wasserberger, Webb, Weber, Worf, Williams, Winter, Wiley, Yin. Mr. Speaker, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 2 aye, 58 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to not concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill 28. Committee to go and defend the position of House Chairman Tarver, Banks, and Wiley. Tarver, Banks, and Wiley will go down for on our behalf. Okay. That ends those. Okay, excuse me, we are at that order of business of signing of enrolled acts. Reading clerk will read the enrolled act.
House Enrolled Act 1, being original House Bill 25, an act relating to motor vehicles, amending when notification and reporting is required for motor vehicle accidents, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign enrolled act number, enrolled act number 1, being the original House Bill number, 25. This was a transportation bill, ladies and gentlemen. I have so signed. Next enrolled act for our consideration, enrolled act number 2.
House Enrolled Act 2, being original House Bill 27. An act relating to, an act relating to motor vehicles, amending disabled windshield placards content as specified, providing rulemaking authority, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign enrolled act number 2, being original House Bill number 27. I have so signed. Okay. Next enrolled act for our consideration, the House Enrolled Act number 3.
House Enrolled Act 3, being original House Bill 92. An act relating to Wyoming Livestock Board, requiring the board to initiate memorandums of understanding regarding the identification of livestock delivered to other states, requiring reports, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled act number 3, being the original House Bill number 92. It's done. I have so signed. That's complete. That was an ag bill. The last one before that was a transportation bill, so. All right, next one for our consideration is House Enrolled Act number 4.
House Enrolled Act 4, being original House Bill 14. An act relating to prioritization of cease and transfer projects for municipal solid waste facilities, authorizing expenditure of previously appropriated funds, establishing a prioritized list of projects, establishing a maximum amount to be expended on projects, granting the Department of Environmental Quality limited discretionary authority to modify the prioritized list, specifying expenditures for a carcass management project, providing definitions, requiring reports, repealing a prior priority list of cease and transfer projects, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled act number 4, being original House Bill number 14. I have so signed. Representative Brown.
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Speaker.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I did just get some confirmation a little earlier today, and I know that we've had some discussion on the tragedy that happened in Green River last week. One of the fatalities in those accidents was actually a Wyoming Guardsman. Specialist Quentin Romero of the 115th Field Artillery Rear Detachment was involved in the accident in the tunnels, and I believe was found to be the third victim. And I just wanted to pass along to the House members from my point of view, dealing with our military on a pretty much daily basis, just how incredibly sad I am. And if, Mr. Speaker, if we can get just a brief moment of silence in honoring of all of the members that we lost. I believe all 3 of them were Wyomingites. And if we can just get a brief moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Brown. Okay. Oh, Representative Thayer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quentin's service will be on Saturday in Rollins, if anybody's interested. I can't think of the time right now, but it'll be on Saturday. So.
Thank you, Representative Thayer. Appreciate that. Seeing no other announcements. Okay. Next enrolled act for consideration, enrolled act number 5.
House Enrolled Act 5 being original House Bill 22, an act relating to Homeland Security, amending the definition to include certified water and wastewater operators for purposes of emergency response, requiring local Homeland Security plans to coordinate with certified water and wastewater operators as specified, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign enrolled act number 5, being original House Bill number 22. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Lisa Campbell. Next enrolled act for our consideration, House Enrolled Act number 6.
House Enrolled Act 6 being original House Bill 30, an act relating to motor vehicles, amending expiration and renewal of licenses for persons under 21 years of age, amending identification card contents, clarifying the timeline for contested case hearings regarding licenses, amending requirements for replacement licenses, adding a fee for replacement licenses, repealing obsolete provisions, providing rulemaking authority, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled act number 6, having been original House Bill number 30. I have so signed. Next act for our consideration, House Enrolled Act number 7.
House Enrolled Act 7 being original House Bill 41, an act relating to environmental quality, clarifying the financial institutions from which operators may obtain irrevocable letters of credit to deposit with the Department of Environmental Quality in lieu of a bond, specifying applicability, authorizing rulemaking, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled act number 7, being original House Bill number 41. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Lawley. Our next enrolled act, act number 8.
House Enrolled Act 8 being original House Bill 61, an act relating to state land leasing, authorizing a person who is not currently in violation of the terms of their state land lease to have preferred right to renew their lease and provide for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled act number 8, having been original House Bill number 61. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Banks. Next enrolled act for our consideration, number 9.
House Enrolled Act 9 being original House Bill 69, an act relating to corporations, partnerships, and associations, amending the grounds for administrative dissolution, revocation, and forfeiture to include foreign adversary ownership or control as specified, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign enrolled act number 9, having been original House Bill number 69. I have so signed. That was a corporations bill, ladies and gentlemen. Next enrolled act for our consideration, House Enrolled Act number 10.
House Enrolled Act 10 being original House Bill 73, an act relating to recreation safety, adding rock climbing as a recreation activity for purposes of the Recreation Safety Act and for liability of the landowner whose land is in use for recreation purposes, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign enrolled act number 10, having been originally House Bill 73. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Lloyd Larson. Next act for our consideration, House Enrolled Act number 11.
House Enrolled Act 11 being original House Bill 75, an act relating to severance tax, decreasing the severance tax rate for surface coal, making conforming changes, and providing for an effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign enrolled act number 11, having been original House Bill 75. I have so signed. Congratulations, Representative Clouston. Next enrolled act and last for our consideration this evening, enrolled act number 12.
House Enrolled Act 12 being original House Bill 82, an act relating to the insurance code, requiring health insurance carriers to follow specified guidelines regarding healthcare provider credentialing, specifying that health carriers shall be required to violate or fail to meet requirements of a nationally recognized accrediting entity, providing definitions, specifying applicability, requiring rulemaking, and providing for an effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign enrolled act number 12, having been original House Bill 82. I have so signed. This was a labor bill. Oh. Okay. Next enrolled acts for our consideration will be Senate Enrolled Act number 1.
Senate Enrolled Act number 1 being original Senate File 15, an act relating to oil and gas, amending the authority of the Wyoming Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to regulate non-commercial reserve pits, producing water retention pits and emergency overflow pits as specified, and providing for effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 1, having been original Senate File 15. I have so signed. Next Senate Enrolled Act for our consideration, number 2.
Senate Enrolled Act 2 being original Senate File 16, an act relating to industrial development and siting, requiring the provision of notice to tribal governments of applications for industrial siting permits, making conforming amendments, requiring rulemaking, specifying applicability, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Enrolled Act number 2, Senate Enrolled Act number 2, having been originally Senate File 16. I have so signed. Next Senate file for our consideration is Enrolled Act number 3.
Senate Enrolled Act 3 being original Senate File 20, an act relating to oil and gas, requiring the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to promulgate rules and to provide bonding options for oil and gas operators as specified, specifying bonding requirements, requiring reports, specifying uses of the conservation fund, authorizing the imposition of fees, making conforming amendments, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign an Enrolled Act number 3, having been originally Senate File number 20. I have so signed. And Senate Enrolled Act number 4.
Senate Enrolled Act 4 being original Senate File 23. An act relating to motor vehicles, expanding the types of healthcare providers who have the authority to submit a letter on behalf of a patient applying for a handicap placard, making conforming amendments and providing for effective date, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 4, having been originally Senate File 23. I have so signed. Then Senate Enrolled Act number 5.
Senate Enrolled Act 5 being original Senate File 25. An act relating to motor vehicles, creating an electronic lien and title system, requiring the Department of Transportation to implement and administer an electronic lien and title system, providing a definition, exempting mobile homes, making conforming amendments, requiring rulemaking, requiring a report, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 5, having been originally Senate File number 25. I have so signed. Next Senate file for our consideration are Senate Enrolled Act number 6.
Senate Enrolled Act 6 being original Senate File 149. An act relating to motor vehicles, authorizing county treasurers to accept applications and payment for wildlife conservation license plates, amending application requirements, requiring rulemaking, and providing for effective dates, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 6, having been originally Senate File number 149. I have so signed. And that completes our enrolled acts for this evening. Committee announcements. Chairman Andrew, number 4, education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet Wednesday, February 19th upon noon recess in Capitol Extension Room 3 to hear 3 bills. Senate File 126, establishment of a K-8 public lab school. Senate File 162, Education Block Grant Model Amendments. And Senate File 5, School District Vehicles Flashing Lights Authorized.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I talked to her about that. Yeah, please, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Knapp, number 7, Corpse.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Your number 7 corporations will meet Wednesday, February 19th upon noon recess. And we will be having a presentation for National Council of Insurance Legislators. We will be dealing with SF 46 and SF 56. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Knapp. Number 1, Chairman Washut, Judiciary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1 will meet at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Wednesday, February 19th, in room E001 to consider Senate File 7 engrossed protection order amendments, Senate File 8 protection orders effective during appeal or review, and Senate File 79 district courts change of venue if time permits.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Bear, number 2, Probes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 2, Appropriations, will be meeting tomorrow upon noon recess to discuss 2 bills and 3 referrals. The 2 bills are Senate File 191, State Funds Proxy Voting and Pecuniary Investments, and Senate File 39, Automatic Transfer of Automobile Title Upon Death.
Thank you, Chairman Bear. Chairman Rodriguez-Williams, number 10, Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 10 will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in room 3. We'll hear 2 bills, Senate File 113, Greater Opportunity Act, and Senate File 74, Immunity for Drug Overdose Reporting.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. Any other committee announcements? None? Chief Clerk, does that clear the deck? Majority Floor Leader, we will entertain a motion, sir.
I have one. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House adjourn until Wednesday, February 19th at 10 a.m.
You have heard the motion of the good Majority Floor Leader. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. Tomorrow will be the 26th day of session, February the 19th, 2025 of the 68th Wyoming Legislature. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.